my job in film, I think the first answer that I can give you is to inform and improve in the process of storytelling through music if I can. Describe the characters, describe the atmosphere and the ambiance of what the story requires. And so my job is to be a collaborator with the director in achieving all these things, the atmospherics, the emotional content, and so on.
Welcome to Fantasy Picks Movie Edition. In this episode, we are going to explore the world of film music and celebrate the top 5 film composers of all time. From epic orchestral scores to haunting melodies, these composers have created some of the most memorable and iconic soundtracks in history. Join us as we dive into the masterpieces and what makes them so memorable. And remember that you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or whichever your podcast delivery choice is. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and soon to be on Patreon. We are part of the Pirate Core Entertainment Network, where you can find other podcasts such as Panels to Pixels and Adrenaline Cinemas. By the way, we also started a Facebook group called Movies That Failed at the Box Office or with Critics. It's our little community for all fans to talk about these failed movies, and a place to give us your feedback on the podcast or any episodes we post. We are joined by our film music aficionados, Patrick Reilly, Mark Kirkman, and Frank Rodriguez. How's it going, guys?
Going good.
Awesome.
Well,
so, I just want to tell the little story to the audience. So this is basically our second time that we're trying to record this.
and I know why. I'm going to address the elephant in the room. Okay. The last one did not have enough John Carpenter in it. So Rob had to do it again. All right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
No, we needed more cowbell, Frank.
Exactly. Just like he needs more cowbell.
Yeah.
I need more Carpenter.
There you go.
So yeah, we had some technical difficulties, and so we had to unfortunately redo the podcast again. So we basically counted the first time as a dress rehearsal. Yeah, so this actually was supposed to come out about a month ago, but like I said, unfortunately that didn't happen. So this is our second time trying to do this, which
I'm telling you, people, that last one was gold. It's gold.
We'll never have it again.
We'll never have it again. Well, you know, shit happens, right? So, as we did the first time, we all came to an agreement. So, you know, there's a lot of great film composers out there, and we all had to kind of choose a top 5. So normally we always do our top 5 where we do it as a draft. Is there something you want to say, Frank?
But no, I was lobbying for top 6, but that's okay.
Okay. So
that's cool.
So normally we do this as a draft like you do in fantasy football, but we probably were never, and we also wanted to play some music. So that's one of the things that, you know, sometimes that we just don't do on this podcast, and we definitely wanted to share at least a little bit of that music with our audience. So the best thing we did was we just kind of agreed on who the top 5 were going to be according to, of course, their body of work, how long they've been in the business, of course, and some of the movies they have influenced. And we came up with our top 5 as a group. Before we get there, guys, I got introduced to film music. Honestly, it was through Star Wars. And it was John Williams.
Same
and it's
here.
when I saw Empire Strikes Back, I remember seeing. Here's the funny part about this. I got introduced to it by mistake. And what I mean by that is in the 70s and 80s, music companies had this thing back then that if a film was very popular, let's make a disco version.
Oh God, I remember that.
Yeah, the disco
The
version of
infamous Mezco. Remember
Yes.
Mezco?
I remember Mesco. So wow. So I remember that Star Wars had, the Star Wars disco, which they had a 3-minute one, and then they had one that I think was like 20 minutes long or something like that.
Yeah, played in the clubs.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then in the back of that album, they had Galactic Funk or something, which was basically a drum corps, which was actually pretty cool. If you ever hear it, it's actually a really, really cool side to hear. So when they came out with Empire, I heard some kind of, I don't know, mixed up version, a mix of The Empire Strikes Back, and I said, "Oh, I want to get that." So I didn't think, because at that time I didn't think that film music was actually recorded on albums. I was too young and stupid to know that. So what did I do? I saw an album with Darth Vader on it, and I thought, oh, that has to be it. And then when I get it home, I'm like, this is the music from the movie. And I was kind of a little bit disappointed, but then as I started hearing it, I was like, oh wait, this is actually kind of cool. And then, of course, you hear the Imperial March, you hear Yoda's theme, and I just fell in love with it so much that started my love affair with film music from that point on. So anything that has to do with John Williams, and then after that, it was just it all depended on what movies were out there. And then I got to the point where I was just collecting
Music.
I was collecting.
I was doing. I think I was doing the same thing when I was in elementary school. I was buying cassettes of like movies that I liked.
Yeah,
and I thought it was normal, but it wasn't. Every other kid was. I mean, I was listening to other music too, but like you, I was also buying soundtracks and stuff because
exactly.
it was so cool.
So I remember buying in my time, it was, albums or cassettes. So I bought the albums, and sometimes there were albums, for certain movies that I was like, which I still own. And I believe they're worth something because they just they don't even have that piece of music on a CD or available for streaming. But I do have a ton of albums because sometimes they would just put them on sale just because a lot of people didn't buy them. So they're like, okay, so this is all of a sudden going to be $3. And I was like, oh, that's from a movie. Let me grab it. And also sometimes, some of the albums will come in, did have music like, Beverly Hills Cop, of course, had all that great 80s music back then.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But yeah, that was my experience with film music. Until this day, I'm a big fan of it, and I think one of the things that I hope to do one day is, what is it? One of those showing
symphony.
Yeah, like one of those showings that they do. They actually have a symphony there while they're actually playing the actual, the movie. And I'm hoping.
I went to 3 of those here in Orlando at the Orlando Philharmonic, which was amazing, man. I saw Star Wars, Empire, and Return of the Jedi, and I bought tickets for each one. They were about 2-3 months apart. They had them in Orlando, and I went. And it's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, they had it here, but because, of course, of my job, I just could not do it, especially on the days I wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that's how I experience music. And of course, then working in audio and video and doing demos for people and stuff like that for, to sell that equipment, besides using regular music or, classic music, from 70s, 80s, rock, or whatever it is. For those who enjoyed, film music, I used to also play that too. So for you guys, I mean, what's your take on it? How did you get introduced to film music, and what is it that still attracts you to this day?
Well, for me, I was saying also, I mean, when you were talking about Star Wars, that was one of the first memories I have getting into film music. But I honestly remember seeing Jaws for the first time. And that's the first time that music actually, because that was like one of the first movies I ever went to. I remember my aunt took me to this movie, and it scared the crap out of me as a kid. And I didn't go in the water for a long time, but I loved the movie. I became obsessed with sharks, and I used to go fishing all the time with my dad and stuff. So that was really cool. And I remember that one particular piece of music really interested me, but I wasn't quite into, getting music back then, picking up, cassettes or anything until I got around into Star Wars. And I
Right.
think it was Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi were the first two that I picked up right after I saw the movie. And then eventually I got A New Hope. But like you, it was John Williams that got me into it. And
Mm, cool. It's funny because when one of the things that I remember is that my mom thought I was weird. While everybody else, is playing regular music, she's like, "Why the fuck is he listening to like the symphonic shit out there?" Like she must have thought, "Oh man, I got one of those kids that are just a weird kid."
Got a nerd.
see, I think that's weird. It's like most moms would not want you listening to like Black Sabbath and going out smoking dope and stuff. It's like, oh, he's listening to symphonic music. He's going to be a genius.
Yeah,
Like,
but I mean, it all depends on where your parents
Yeah.
come from, and my parents were not, I would say, cultured in that sense.
Yeah.
So, but for me,
Listen to Santa Cruz.
pretty much, yeah. We were listening to of course, my parents being Spanish, they were listening to Spanish music and stuff like that, and my cousins were the same. They would listen to Spanish. And my dad's like, "Why can't you just be like your cousins?"
I'm sorry, Dad.
I'm sorry, but I have to listen to this, this third measure coming in.
Luckily, my mom didn't care. She'd be like, "Oh, what is this? Return of the Jedi? Yeah, sure. Put it in the cart, just buy it for me, whatever. Just anything to shut me up."
Yeah. So Frank, what was your experience with it?
Mine is kind of funny because it wasn't necessarily a soundtrack to a movie, and I don't even know why I owned this thing. There's a album that we had that was Spider-Man. It wasn't a movie. It wasn't like to a show or anything like that. It was just this compilation of music that I guess Marvel had authorized, and it was different songs about Spider-Man.
Really?
And I was
think
like, this is
I think I know that album. Did it have like
Yes.
rock bands redoing Spider-Man
Yes.
songs and stuff? So did it have the Ramones on there?
I believe it did, yeah.
I think I had that same exact album. Oh, I think it might have been
With like
Saturday
Spidey
morning.
on the front, and then you open
Yeah.
it up and it's a comic book inside.
Yeah, I think it might have had that. We're
Like
such
Vulture.
nerds, man.
So I had this thing and I was like, okay. I watched Spider-Man all the time. I was like, I've never heard this music on Spider-Man. It's the cartoon show.
Right.
So I was like, all right, I have this thing. I love it. What about other movies and things like that? It made me think about it. Like, there's got to be albums like this for movies and things like that I like. And I actually did own Escape from New York.
Right.
And that's one of the ones that I was like, I have it on vinyl. I actually might still have it because it might still be in the Bronx. But I love that album so much. I used to play it all the time, and I actually even have it on my iTunes and everything like that. So, yeah, I once I got into it, and then I met you, and we were both kind of like, "Yo, let's check out these different types of music to soundtracks and things like that, or to new age and things like that." So,
yeah, we were into a lot of the instrumental stuff, and I believe also that there was a movie that till this day I have yet to find it. I don't know what happened to it, called The Final Countdown, but it's not The Final Countdown with the
Kirk
aircraft
Douglas?
right. It's not that. This one was about an SAS team.
oh, I know what you're talking about. Yes,
I think you know what I'm talking about. And they had a cool ass soundtrack. And I remember finding it on vinyl, and I was like, that is so cool. So it's very hard to find that music nowadays, especially
the Final Option.
Actually, you're right. I'm sorry. It could be The Final Option.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Speaking of which,
To the
Speaking of
iPad.
which, the Final Countdown with the aircraft it also had a really good soundtrack. So it's
Yeah, it did. It
Yeah.
actually did. So,
Yeah.
and it's funny because that soundtrack used to get played in the Intrepid Museum in
I
New
was
York.
there in New York. I was there
Yeah.
a long time ago in the 80s, man.
Yeah, and I remember that they took that soundtrack to play some of the I guess some of the footage of, the airplanes and stuff like that, because it was a really cool soundtrack. So Mark, what's your take on all this? How did you get introduced to it?
Oh, that's it's pretty simple. I'm the youngest of 4 kids, and my mother, she lost her mother at in her 20s and had to raise her sisters. So my aunts used to live in the same house as the rest of us, and they each had their own room. They had whatever they needed, and my sisters are older. My brother and I shared a room, but I was always surrounded by tons of music. And on top of that, my father was an AM radio listener too, which played a lot of symphonic music.
Oh,
So
okay.
I used to have to listen to whatever was around anyway. And my father would listen to a lot of the old soundtracks that were on the radio station. And on top of that, when Star Wars came out, obviously in the 70s, I was hanging around both my aunts, and then they had the Star Wars soundtrack. I started like developing that ear of like, I love to hear this, just like you, but unfortunately I didn't look at the Empire Strikes Back album that had Vader's face on it, like a Kiss album, and say I'll get that, and then it being symphonic. But I grew up on it, and I was so used to it, and I enjoyed it. Like the Cantina music and New Hope is always something I
Right.
love.
That's awesome, man.
So
Max Rebo, baby.
No, not
That was
one.
Return of the Jedi.
So I would adapt to that. By the time I was in junior high, I would start picking up my own on cassette and then eventually CD.
Right.
And then not just the compositions, but I'd get the music too, because you would be interested if there was a rock based soundtrack as well. So I had a bit of both, and I had people come in going, "What are you?" Because I would study to like the Willow soundtrack,
Oh, wow.
stuff
Okay.
like that, and I would listen to those. And my father came and he goes, "What are you listening to?" And I told him, because that's from that movie. This is actually pretty good. So he enjoyed it when he would hear something like that. But obviously, I was in my teens, and instead of hearing heavy metal or heavy rock music from my room, he'd be like, "Oh," he goes, "Dude, that's odd music. What is he listening to?" And he'll come in, peep in, and he goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm studying to this." I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay, that works." And it's a good relaxing thing
Right.
to do as
Right.
well, because there's no words to distract you.
Yeah.
And on
Exactly.
top of that, you got rocking kind of music too. They're very good. It sets the tone in a movie, and I always liked it because you could actually remember the scene that music queued up in. So
Right.
it brings you back in your mind. You don't necessarily have to constantly going back and like put the VHS tape in and watch the movie to get to that point. You just replay it in your mind, in your memory of visuals and how it sounded together.
Right.
So that's what I always liked. And I still, to this day, I still have a lot of the vinyl and CDs that I love. And just like Frank, I'm a huge John Carpenter fan, and I have those. And you can find a lot of that
A
stuff
big
on.
smile on Frank's face there.
You could find a lot of soundtracks, and I remember is Maurice Sarabande was the one place to go to get all the odd or interesting style soundtracks that you couldn't find anywhere.
And it's still around, I believe. I mean, Reilly is still around. There's another one I discovered. So I was watching The Hunt for Red October, and of course I love the soundtrack to that, and I do have it on CD. But then I was trying to read something up on it, and there was like, oh, and then they decided to do an extended version of that album. So it said who the music company it was, which I forget right now. But when I went to their website, they got tons and tons of soundtracks that they actually have extended versions of it. That damn CD, I mean, they no longer sell it because it came out, I think, in 2003 or 2009, something like that. Freaking thing goes for like $200 now on eBay. And that's the thing with Maurice Sarabande. Sometimes they will come out with special edition stuff, which you can only get through them. They won't sell it in the stores.
Yeah.
And sometimes, those things cost so much money now just to get. I remember when I was in school, somebody was telling me about, because he was into soundtracks too, and it's like, oh yeah, they got like these soundtracks of movies that they never even came out with a soundtrack.
Huh.
Or, but Verisa Aron decided to come out with it. So yeah, it's really cool. I mean, and I think also the fact that if you hunt them down and then you get to hear some of this music too, and there's a reason why, because I actually looked into this. Why is it that sometimes you don't hear the entire work of the movie in an album? And that all has to do with, there's a lot of parts in a movie where the music is just kind of like a background thing. So if you're actually listening to, yeah, it's just filler. So if you're listening to it by itself, it really doesn't it really doesn't get any kind of emotional reaction to you, nothing. So they do two things. They compose music for the movie, but they also compose music for an album. And it's the same music, except now they rearrange it to make sure that, it could be heard within a certain amount of time. And the one thing also that I learned about was that back when they had albums, vinyl, there's only so much time that you have in each side, because the question was, why is it that instead of it being, I guess, chronological, or the way, from beginning to end, the way the movie is, sometimes you'll have the beginning, you have the next song is something from the middle, the next song is something from the end, but then it goes back to the beginning again and things like that. And the reason for that is because you have to fit it like a puzzle within that album. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense. Nowadays, of course, things are streamed, so now sometimes you just get everything, the way the movie was, how you listen to it. But yeah, it's really cool. I mean, so I would say the same thing. My parents, again, thought that I was weird. My love affair with with Star Wars, and me thinking I was going to get some disco album. I got actually symphonic music. Still have that album to this day. It's scratched up. It looks like crap, but to me it's probably one of my most treasured possessions, because it's the first album that got me into this kind of stuff. Besides John Williams, of course, we discovered other great composers out there from a lot of our favorite movies. So another one that I got into was, people like Danny Elfman, Hans Zimmer. There was, Steiner. I mean, there's just so many of them out there, and there's just great, stuff that's out there. Alan Silvestri, John Carpenter, like you, Frank, Vangelis, Brad Fidel, Basil Basil Pellidoris, who did, of course, Conan the Barbarian, RoboCop, The Hunt for Red October, which I was just hearing yesterday. So we came up with our top 5. We're going to go into it right now. So our number 5 is, of course, Danny Elfman, the great Danny Elfman. So Danny Elfman, born May 29th, 1953, is an American film composer, singer, songwriter. He came to prominence as the singer and songwriter for that new wave band Oingo Boingo in the early 1980s. Since scoring his first studio film in 1985, Elfman has garnered international recognition for composing over 100 feature films, which is crazy, as well as compositions for television, stage production, and concert halls. So, guys, Danny Elfman is, I think, one of the great composers out there. But to me, it really kind of I guess, surprised me that somebody who was in a rock band all of a sudden became a composer. My thought was always, at least at the time, my thought was always, it's like, you have to be classically trained and stuff like that. And here's a guy that just, got his first start with Pee-wee's Big Adventure. What's your take on Danny Elfman?
Legendary. I think it's legendary. Of course, my first experience with Danny Elfman was from Pee-wee's Great Adventure. Look at the man now. It's like he is so celebrated because we all know him from so many movies, including Pee-wee, but he got major acclaim for the first Batman movie in 1989. And gotta love that, because it's such a classic themed soundtrack for a movie. And then he moved on to like Spider-Man and all these other movies. So he's very acclaimed. My favorite thing that he's put out is, of all things, was The Nightmare Before Christmas. And not only did he lend doing the music there, he actually sang as Jack Skellington as well. And so that score itself and that music, almost as like a musical, was amazing. And
Right.
I just love it. He's 70. He just turned 70 years old too, and I can't believe he's that old. I don't see him as that. Now it's like, as I see the pictures of him on my screen, the man, he has his shirt off and he's got a ton of tattoos on him. I never really thought of him as like that kind of a person with the wacky hair. You know,
Could you imagine John Williams, like, if like all of a sudden, like,
All
they show
tatted
him,
up.
he's like all tatted up, like his back is just full of tattoos, like, you know, like he's like this biker guy in the weekends or something.
Got like a big empire tattoo.
That's
yeah, I
cool,
just
man.
loved him. Yeah, I still love his work, and I look forward to hearing him. Obviously, they're filming Beetlejuice 2 now,
Right.
and he is most likely going to be in there because Tim Burton always uses Danny Elfman all the time within his film.
That's cool, man. And you, Frank?
I actually was in the Oingo Boingo time, so
Oh, really?
I
Okay.
loved him for
It's a
Weird
Dead Man's
Science.
Party.
I loved him for Dead Man's Party.
Right.
You know, those things were the way that I knew him first, and I knew who he was. But
Okay.
then when I heard he was going to be doing the soundtrack for Batman, I was like, and which we were doing that a lot with that movie, because we were like, Michael Keaton is Batman, the guy from Oingo Boingo doing the music.
I know,
Wait a
right?
minute.
No,
But he
you're
did a
right.
fantastic job, and that's probably my favorite thing that he's done.
I'm
is
curious.
Batman.
I'm curious how many of us bought the soundtrack for Batman in '89, thinking that we were getting the Danny Elfman version, and we got the Prince
We got a
one.
Prince because there wasn't there
Yes.
there were two soundtracks, weren't there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One was
Yeah.
a score and
Yes.
one was a soundtrack.
That is correct.
I almost fell for that, and I was looking at him and said, "Why are there two?" And I had to actually look on the back and make sure I got the right one. So
Same
Well,
here.
the
Yep.
first one that got released was the one by Prince. And
yeah.
of course, you know, when you watch Batman, there is a lot of Prince music there, and I was a big Prince fan back then. You know, so
Yes,
I
you
dug
were.
the music, so I did buy it. Plus,
Yeah.
the one I bought came in this round black tin case,
Mhm.
and when you open it, you had the CD there. So I still have that, which had the tin case had like an
Batman logo?
embossed Batman logo and stuff like that. And then one day I was in Costco, and all of a sudden I see, you know, Batman the score, and my eyes just wide open. I was like, finally they have it, you know. So and I went
ran out. Yeah, I ran out myself and got it. And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, you got it! It's the Danny Elfman." It's like, I was
Yep.
like, "Oh," and I put it on. It's like Bat Dance. What the hell?
Bat Dance. I can't remember Bat Dance.
I'm like, "Oh, okay, I have to do the Batusi now." And
yeah.
I know it's like the old Adam West doing the.
Yeah.
Remember that movie
Oh my
doing
god,
the
yeah.
dance?
the
Jeez.
Batusi.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think Batman, it basically, I think till this day is what he's really so well known for.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that score, and I'm gonna put it on here, but yeah, it is just I think every time they do a Batman movie, a lot of people think, hey, you know, is it gonna sound like Batman '89 soundtrack from Danny Elfman? And the great thing about it has been that some of the movies have incorporated this piece.
Right.
Mhm.
And the cartoon too.
Actually, he did a different one for the animated.
It's very similar.
It is.
Different arrangement, I think it was.
Like Batman.
Yeah, so So that
So, yeah.
that piece is always awesome because every time I hear that, my thought is I want to be in a Batmobile and shit, and in the middle of the
I
night,
want
just
one of those, man.
take off and just and stuff like that. But
It's kind of got like a marching theme to
It
it
does.
once it starts to
That
pick
too,
up at a
yes.
certain point.
And I'm like Frank. I mean, my first exposure to him was Weird Science, which I like the song from the movie, and then Back to School with Dead Man's Party. The scene with Rodney Dangerfield at the party, which was great.
Robert Downey Jr.
And
too,
then I remember Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and his every composer has their own signature to their songs, and Danny Elfman has a very hard to describe, but it's a very carnival sound to it. It's very like I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but
it's a very whimsical type of thing where sometimes when you and not all of them because
not all of them.
Not all of them.
I'm like, wow, Danny Elfman did this. Yeah.
But when it comes to his music, I think that it's going to be more fantastical.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, his signature all of a sudden just shows up. Of who he is. And that's why some of the stuff that I'm going to be playing, they all have that signature sound of Danny Elfman that just sounds so. I mean, it's just iconic, and you listen to it. You can listen to it for hours, and he tells such a great story through his music.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's that darkness into it. There's kind of like almost that sideshow weirdness to it.
It is a sideshow carnival music. It's almost
exactly.
Like what it is.
So the other one that I loved was like Men in Black. So Men in Black again had that, of course, with all this different aliens and all these different and Men in Black was a great movie where it was a very different movie. I mean, it was an alien movie, but the fact that it was an alien movie that had to do with the legendary Men in Black in lore, where especially back in the 50s and 60s, people always claim that the government is out there, and I have people from the government. These Men in Black came and talked to me, so they grabbed it from that, but then it turns out that they're basically like a what is it, like a spaceport, not a spaceport. Like they're just kind of like
they're like the immigration,
right? It's like immigration, and it's the funniest thing on how like a lot of the key players or the key people on Earth, some of them are aliens and things like that. So it was actually awesome. But the way it starts, it's great. I mean, because it does have that signature Danny Elfman sound.
Will Smith had just gone ahead and said that he slapped Chris Rock because he was the alien. There would have been a lot less trouble.
Jesus Christ.
And Frank went there.
Yes, he did.
That he did.
He slapped the alien right out of Chris Rock. I like the fact that it's got like this electric guitar thing going on in the background.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
very cool.
Bass. Yep.
That sound right there is very Danny Elfman signature.
Yes.
What is that, like a harp?
The strings and
something.
Yeah. So I mean, you could hear that like there's so much fun behind the music when when he does that, and it's like you were saying, he did have electric guitar, like I think he had bass, that was like a bass guitar, right, Mark?
It sounded like a bass. It could be easily a kind of like a Moog that or a synthesizer that has that bass sound,
right?
Because sometimes when it's clacky like that and very attack, that's usually very reminiscent of a synth that's sampled with that bass, because it's straight attack. You don't get that straight on a bass guitar.
No, exactly.
Because I play bass guitar and I know the difference in sounding.
The other one that I liked, and it's like Mark, like you mentioned before, Edward Scissorhands. I believe you mentioned that one, didn't you?
No, But
No, you
yeah,
mentioned
that
something else. I forgot what it was. What was the other? What was the one that you said that's what
I
got
think
you into him?
Pee-wee's Big Adventure, was it?
what that I got me into Danny Elfman was
Yeah.
mostly Batman, but
It was mostly
89.
Batman. Okay,
Yeah.
so I must have heard wrong, but yeah. So like, I mean, the one thing we have to talk about is his big collaboration with Tim Burton. So
Yes.
Tim Burton being, the person that he is, he's also he's a director that has his own type of style that you see in a lot of his movies, and it just seems like his style and Danny Elfman's music just are so well blended together. So that's why when I heard that, hey, Tim Burton is doing Edward Scissorhands and that Danny Elfman was going to do it, I was like, that's going to be an interesting soundtrack.
Yeah.
But it turned out that it was just like it was very soft soundtrack. It had a lot of like a lot of wonder into it, which I liked, but at the same time it had that I would say that love theme where Johnny Depp and Winona Ryder, on how they were getting closer, but at the same time it's more like I think Edward Scissorhands just kind of experiencing the world for the first time. And it was just kind of a really cool film.
Definitely sets the mood for the movie.
Absolutely.
I think they both Elfman and Burton, they both share similar interests. They both share in gothic and whimsical, and I think that's why they make such a great team.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
He also did other stuff too that's interesting. Obviously, Simpsons.
Yes.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. That's the one thing I like about him is that he does use a chorus a lot in a lot of his music. So I know he used it for Batman. I think he used it for if I'm not mistaken for Men in Black, but he does use it a lot in a lot of his films and things like that. And like you were saying, Mark, the one thing that Danny Elfman, just so everybody out there knows, before his successful music career, Danny Elfman actually worked as an actor and appeared in a few films, including a small role in a Martin Scorsese movie called After Hours, which I didn't even know that. But yeah, exactly. But
Never seen After Hours?
No, I never actually seen that. So despite being also a great musician, and known for his dark and whimsical compositions, Elfman actually suffers from a condition called amusia, which I never heard of this, which means he is unable to read or write music notations. Instead, he composes his music by ear and works closely with, orchestrators to bring his melodies to life. So that was something I didn't know existed. I mean, I can't read or write music, so
but you have to explain the music to somebody in order for have them to be the stenographer,
right?
To write that, and you have to also realize too, during composition, you're not just it's not a whole thing. You have to do it for each instrument, and he would have to describe. All right, well, this set of violins are going to come in with this, and the cello section's over here, but I want the horns to come in at this point, and the kettle drums are going to be at this point,
right?
And then they're going to sound dun dun dun. It's like, to explain that the other person that has been orchestrating over the years recently, I should say in recent years, and doesn't know how to read or write music is Paul McCartney.
I did not know that.
Okay.
Yeah, so he has to have the same thing done for him. Being musicians, though, it's like the first thing, and it's the easiest thing to do and learn, is tablature for guitar or bass, or even
that's what I learned on guitar,
drums. And it's very simple. It's very easy to read and very easy to use. But obviously Danny Elfman's been playing before they started making sheet music where it was tablature. And
Right.
and
Well, I mean, I think it's also the fact that look, in this case, he needs somebody, you know, like an orchestrator or, you know, or somebody to write the music for him, because in a big orchestra there's the orchestrator who is, and if nobody knows what that means, is like there's somebody that the composer actually sits down and says, okay, so for this music, how many horns are we going to need? You know, how many French horns are we going to need? How many violins are we going to need?
Yeah.
What if we throw this in there? You know, so it's actually the orchestra is the one that starts to come up with the actual orchestra and the instruments that's needed for that. And I know, like, I remember when I was getting to what is it, New Age music, I also learned that Yanni, the big New Age musician out there, also does not write music or read music. He has somebody actually write it for him. So I guess, I don't know if he has that same condition, but I guess there are some musicians out there that are famous that are just like, listen, I never knew how to write music, or, you know, I just know how to do the music and somebody has to actually write it for me. So another thing, like you were saying, Mark, he is famous for writing of course, the popular theme song for The Simpsons. That's been around for now, what, 40 years now, The Simpsons or something like that. But yeah,
40 years, geez.
I
I know they started in like around 86
or whatever it is. I just know that, yeah, it's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, I think, the longest running show there is, I think, now. Or one of the longest running shows. But he also wrote for Desperate Housewife, you know, the little catchy tune for that.
Yep.
And right now, from what I was reading, was that he's also composed classical pieces. So we were talking about, you know, a musician all of a sudden doing classical music. And we didn't think that, you know, he had that in him. But yeah, he's actually wrote some classical pieces, such as violin concerto titled Saranda Schizophrenia.
Oh, wow.
Which was commissioned by the American Composers Orchestra and premiered in 2005. So this showcases versatility as a composer across different musical genres, which is great. So yeah, he has surprised me time and time again with what he can do, and, you know, and his music. One of my favorite ones, of course, is Alice's theme from the music Alice, even though the movie was not the best.
Alice in Wonderland?
Alice in Wonderland, yes. The live version. It was I think they called it something. I forgot what they called it. One was called Through the Looking Glass. I'm not even sure.
That's the original
right
book title.
Alice in Wonderland basically is what the movie's called, but then there was a second one that they also did.
Oh, Alice in Wonderland. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, I think, maybe?
No. but yeah, that was actually like I said, I love that soundtrack, and it's probably one of my favorite soundtracks of his, due to the fact that it just has this just beautiful chorus going into it. Again, movie was not that great, and besides, yeah, and here's the other thing: Tim Burton and Danny Elfman. I mean, that group is not complete without having Johnny Depp also in there. Because I don't know how many, and that's something that I would have to probably look up, or maybe one of you guys could look up, but I don't know how many movies Tim Burton has done with Johnny Depp, but it's been a lot.
Oh, yeah.
It's been, I mean, tremendously a lot. But yeah, so I mean, Danny Elfman's music, absolutely great. They're about to actually come out with a new Beetlejuice. So he's, he did the original Beetlejuice with that.
Jeez,
And
I'm looking at a list here of all the movies he's done. Wow, man.
Well,
Well, it's like over
surprisingly
100,
enough,
right?
I mean, I didn't know he did The Wolfman, the recent one. He did Terminator Salvation,
Yep, he
Yes.
did
Hellboy
Avengers
3, Hellboy 2.
Yeah, Avengers Age of Ultron.
Yeah, he did the Hulk, Red
Ang Lee.
Dragon.
Yeah.
Jeez. Oh,
what
let's
seems to me like is that whenever he's working with Tim Burton, Danny Elfman all of a sudden goes, okay, I could let loose.
Yeah.
As
He
opposed
makes
to
magic. Yeah.
right. As opposed to, hey, I have to make a movie, whatever movie I have to do, and I have to go by what that director wants. But it seems like when he works with Tim Burton, it's like saying, so what is it? Steven Spielberg knows what John Williams is all about, and he just lets John Williams do his thing.
Yeah.
To the point where John Williams sometimes is the one that tells him, hey, I think this scene should be like this because I got the music already. And Steven Spielberg has been known to, of course, change a scene because of the music. So I have a feeling that with Tim Burton, it's the same thing. That when Tim Burton and Danny Elfman get together, they create amazing music because of, their similar styles together.
I totally forgot. He also did Midnight Run. Remember that movie with Robert De Niro and Charles?
That was a great
Charles
Grodin.
Great.
Yeah.
Dark Man.
Dark Man.
Remember Dark Man with
I
Liam
love
Neeson?
Dark Man.
Yeah, that was a good movie. That was a little, gem of a movie, man.
That was Sam Raimi's first attempt at a superhero movie.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. No, exactly. So again, the great Danny Elfman, he came in at a number 5. We'll leave off with Danny Elfman, of course, with Beetlejuice, which of course he created also, which is also a great, piece of music. So very similar to Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know.
Every time I go to Universal, man, this song is playing somewhere in the park. I mean,
is it really?
Yeah, and you'll stumble across it, go walking in some place. Yeah,
That's like Tales from the Crypt too.
Yeah,
he also did as well.
So yeah, like you were saying, he's done a lot of movies. Spider-Man, Sleepy Hollow, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Batman Returns, Darkman, Dick Tracy, Mission Impossible. Planet of the Apes, Hulk, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, another one with Johnny Depp, Terminator Salvation, Good Will Hunting, Wednesday, which was the latest,
right?
Hit by Tim
which was done, which was done in Netflix, and that was I guess the latest piece that he did. But that was, he's just a phenomenal composer with his own style that I always look forward to the stuff that he does. So yeah, he was our number 5. And so our next one is our number 4. This one, of course, is James Horner. James Horner, born, of course, in August 14, 1953, and sadly passed away June 22nd, 2015 from a tragic airplane accident. So was an American composer. He worked on over 160 films and television productions between 1978 and 2015. That is huge. And he was the winner of 2 Academy Awards, among many other accolades that he actually had. Musically, he was known for the integration of choral and electronic elements alongside traditional orchestration. So the fact that he was one of the original pioneers of that's great. And for his, of course, frequent use of motifs associated with Celtic music. So if you listen to a lot of his stuff, especially Titanic, has a lot of that type of music in there. So guys, what's your take on that? My first experience with James Horner, I think, was with the movie Aliens. And that was the first time when I heard his music. Honestly, before that, I believe it was just what was it? Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan. That's that was my first one there. But I think, with
the music that made you notice him.
well, yeah, it's the music that made me notice him. And then I think when Aliens came out, then I was like, okay, this guy's a badass, So yeah, no, I mean, his music is absolutely phenomenal. And of course, he became super famous with Titanic and of course Avatar. I mean, his stuff is just great.
My first big, I mean, the one that really influenced me, James Horner's soundtracks, was Braveheart. That was just one of those soundtracks that you just buy the soundtrack and every single song on it is just great. There's not like one song on it one track on it that's, sometimes you're like, okay, let me skip over this, all of them, all of the tracks on that soundtrack is great. So that would have to be it for me. And also, like you said, Aliens just had this, pounding rhythm to it because it fit the music the movie so well.
Correct.
Because it wasn't like the first Alien where it was like suspense horror movie. This was more like military going in, adventure, action. And he just set the mood perfectly for that movie. So that was my my two first ones. And also I didn't know that he had done Wrath of Khan till, it's like, I mean, I've known now, but I didn't find out he had done Wrath of Khan till years later. But that was another one that also influenced me.
How many of you guys have heard like a piece of music in a movie and you go, man, that was good, but at the moment, you don't bother to look to see who it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then years later, right, you're listening to other stuff. And then it's like when you're looking at the filmography or whatever, you're like, oh, I didn't realize he did that. I like that soundtrack, so
that was my case.
Yeah, that was my case also with him on some pieces. So just like it, if nobody out there knew, so James Horner was an avid pilot and owned several aircrafts.
Mm-hmm.
He was also known to fly his own plane to various film scoring sessions, and even incorporated aviation related elements into some of his compositions. So yeah, it's just a little tidbit there. I mean, and unfortunately, that's how he passed away. But Frank, anything for you with James Horner?
Yeah, my first experience with James Horner was actually Krull.
Krull. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, Krull.
Wow.
Yeah, Krull has a great soundtrack. Shitty movie. Best weapon in the world.
The glaive. The glaive.
Yeah, that's
It's funny.
But-
It has a great film prop and
Yeah,
it has a
exactly.
great score, but the movie just sucked.
But it also
Liam
introduced us
Neeson.
to the world, of Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
Liam Neeson
Yeah.
was in there, and
Yeah.
so was Robbie Coltrane, who later played
Wow.
Hagrid in
Yeah.
Harry Potter.
Yeah,
Right. Oh, okay. Cool.
that's pretty cool.
That's really cool. Just so you guys
That's
know, so James Horner's interest in music began at an early age, and he was a child prodigy who
So he was
started
like
playing
Mozart.
started playing piano at the age of 5, guys.
I believe
And
it.
by the time he was 10, he already composed his first piece of music.
Believe it.
I didn't know how to wipe my ass at 10. I think. Okay, so this kid would already had his own music composed. So
He was already starting off and knew his career ahead of time.
yeah. So Mark, your take on him?
I always know his music when I hear it in a film. Whenever we came up, like my favorites would be Commando, Bicentennial Man. Krull is one that I always liked. Jumanji is like amazing to listen to. But my first experience that I really like, it opened my ears to him, was Battle Beyond the Stars.
Oh wow.
Nice.
And
Roger Corman.
yeah, it was an old Roger Corman movie, came out in
Right.
1980. You had John Boy in it from the Waltons, but
Part.
even though it was sci-fi, I always like listened for the music, and I probably seen it on TV so many times, and I was not more into the movie, I was more into the music of the movie with certain scenes.
That is cool. So the one I'm going to play right now is, of course, like I said, the one that I basically got me to notice him, which is Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan, which of course became such a successful movie after the first movie was such a bore. It wasn't, it was how can I say it? Star Trek stuck to the normal way that it did things on TV, which sometimes it was a little too cerebral for people. But for the second movie with the Wrath of Khan, I mean, that thing just blew up and it was great. But I'll play some of that so you guys could actually hear it and appreciate it.
That is awesome, man.
So one of the great things I love about that is it's just the way it starts. I mean, it incorporates
the classic, and it incorporates the classic theme, and then just goes right into the new song. It does it
right into the new, but it just like, I mean, and it gets you excited for it. I mean, it's like that opening where it's like, oh shit, we're going on an adventure here now. This is really cool. So that's one of the things I like. But so you guys know, so one of the things that James Horner has been accused of in the past is for borrowing music from other composers. So like Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and Star Trek III, The Search for Spock include excerpts from Prokofiev's Alexander Nevsky and Romeo and Juliet. I guess things from that. He has been accused of actually reusing music, which is what some composers have done in the past, where they'll take like a piece of music from one and use it somewhere else. So a good example of that, Aliens, is originally from the movie Wolfen, and I didn't know that, which is crazy. I mean, we could hear some of Bishop's Countdown, which is also a fantastic piece of music. This is what really got me into James Horner right here. Yeah, what I like about that is the fact that piece, especially when you're watching the movie and Ripley is trying to get away from this planet and trying to get away, of course, from the alien queen, and this whole thing is about to go thermal nuclear, the entire processing facility. The sense of urgency is so great on that piece right there. I mean, it's just fantastic. I could listen to that over and over again. I mean, that's freaking fantastic on that.
I love the percussive blocks that they use, and it gives you that feel of metal on metal, but also the urgency on it. And it's a great trick and tactic that actually takes you into the film, but also works with the scene, especially when she's on the APC and she takes over and she's trying to get out of on LV-426, trying to get the team out. And that's really, because you feel the energy and it feels as if, hold on, is that a special effect? No, it's the actual part of this song that's
Correct.
filling it up, and then the strings just add accent to
It's
it.
like it's like a hammer hitting an anvil, you know? It's
Correct.
That's exactly what it
yeah.
hears, and it reminds me of part of the Conan
Yes.
soundtrack, which also has some similar notes to that. So don't know if he got that from there.
Could be. You never know.
Being as how he's been kind of accused of a few things here. So the next one I'm going to play is actually from Braveheart, and this also shows his, the great melodies that he could come up with that are just really nice and fantastic. But several critics have noted, stark similarities between Braveheart's main theme and an early theme song, Koaru Wada's Pie Longing from the 1981 Japanese anime series 3x3 Eyes. So I guess there's something very familiar when it comes to that main theme. But this one's going to be Call for the Love of the Princess, which I actually think is a really nice piece. I'll play that right now. There's just
such a great soundtrack, man.
It's just such a great soundtrack and so much passion between in this, with the sound of what you're hearing, which is just fantastic on that.
Yeah, the trilling on that flute in the very beginning and just coming into intro, everything was really, really good. Yeah, just gives that sense of aloneness, urgency, and bring kind of like telling a story, but then the movement that comes in afterwards fills it in and gives you warmth.
Correct.
And it works well with the scene too that you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, Horner's approach to composing is like highly meticulous, and he often conducted it like extensive research to ensure authenticity and capture the essence of like different cultures or historical periods. For instance, he traveled to remote locations and studied indigenous music for his scores such as The New World and The Mask of Zorro. Like this dedication to authenticity is, intense. And it actually reflects a lot in his music, which I think is actually spectacular on that. And we were talking about Tim Burton and of course Danny Elfman being that, that duo. So when it comes to James Horner, his stuff was actually James Cameron. James Cameron used them a lot in a lot of different music. And of course used them for the movie Titanic, which became of course a insane hit, which till this day I cannot explain how the hell it could break so much records when it comes to box office.
I could tell you how.
Go ahead,
dude.
My heart will always go on.
Yeah, well, you have the girls going to go see this, and you know who they're going to be dragging along to go with them. So that's two at least 2 tickets right there.
That's at least 2 tickets there. Yeah. And then didn't it come out also at a time where like there was really nothing in the movie, so they're like, what? Let's go watch Titanic again.
And that was one of those bizarre instances where the movie didn't start off that great. Remember, it was open in theaters and it just did okay. Right. And it just kept going and going and going. It didn't dip down until months later, man.
That is something that will not happen ever again, especially with the way the business is run nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're recording this in July, but June had 4 major movies come out.
Yeah.
And it was one every week, and 3 of them failed at the box office.
Well, talking about that, Rob, when we covered The Flash, which actually should be coming out soon, that's coming out on digital media soon.
Yes.
And that
do well.
shows you the way the business is. If
Yeah.
a movie flops, it goes right to digital to make up for
It
the
does,
market area.
and that's because with the pandemic, it actually conditioned people to say, listen,
Yeah.
you know what? I'll just wait another month and a half, and it'll be on streaming services.
Yeah.
We honestly condition people that way. So to have a movie like this, which like Patrick, you were saying, it just slowly built up over a period of time, where if in today's business they would have just said, you know what, this is a flop, we're not opening, just send it straight to streaming, whatever it is, hopefully we could recover that way. But no, they gave it time, and it was in the theaters for what, months?
More than a month. So I think it was over a year, and then they
over a
re-released it afterwards.
Yeah.
And this is one of those rare instances of word of mouth, I firmly believe, because I don't think anybody expected this to be a hit. They just marketed it, and it just came out, and people said, all right, let's go check it out. And then more and more word of mouth kept coming out, and the movie just coasted over a year, man, and just kept making money.
I mean, look at like I said, in this past month, or in June, Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny, which of course is considered a flop also, there are already movie theaters going, nope, not going to carry it. Not even give it that time to say, okay, you know what? Let's just keep it there for a few months, and let's see how we can make some more money and stuff like that. No, it's just, nope. It flopped. It'll be released on Disney Plus, probably in another month and a half or whatever it is, and moving on.
Literally 60 days after it's been out in theater, usually 65, 68 days after initial release.
Right.
It's available for digital or streaming.
Yes.
And that's it. I'm talking about digital streaming in the sense of purchase it like iTunes.
Wow, man.
Yeah, where you could like purchase it for like $20 or something like that. And then after that, then they'll put it on disc.
Blu-ray.
Blu-ray. And then after that, it's like, all right, now we could just stream it in one of these streaming services. So
HBO. Yep.
It just honestly, I mean, this movie, I don't think would have, in today's world, I don't think this movie would have done what it did. But let me tell you, the soundtrack, and of course Celine Dion's music to it, of course, was huge. But the soundtrack also made it absolutely phenomenal on a movie that, when you look at it, you're like, okay, it's Titanic. But I think the music really drove this this piece too. I'll put one on. It's called Never in Absolution. So I don't know if you guys know this, but Titanic is the biggest selling orchestral soundtrack of all time. I thought Star Wars was, because of course Star Wars having the advantage of coming out in the 70s.
40 years. 40 years advantage,
but no, I mean this thing actually, I mean, blew up. And that piece shows you, he first has the bagpipes, just kind of a solo on the bagpipes, and then it just goes in
to the chorus,
this beautiful chorus. And every time I hear that chorus, honestly, you start to think of all the people that died on the Titanic, and it actually gets very emotional, because it's like, wow, I mean, these people had a horrific night, and just to think of, hey, am I going to see daylight again? Am I going to see my family again? And things like that. And it's just, but then once once you know that they're gone, I mean, just that piece of music there kind of really puts it into perspective. It's like, wow, but huge movie. And of course, you guys know that. So one of the things James Horner is deeply passionate about, was the environment and conservation. He actively supported organizations dedicated to preserving and protecting like Earth's natural resources, and often incorporated environmental themes into his music, such as his score for the film Avatar, which, of course, as you guys know, James Cameron is exactly, the same way. Especially James Cameron being a crazy diver that he is. It's just he's very passionate about that. But Avatar was huge. I mean, what did you guys think of that movie itself? Till this day, again, just like Titanic, how the hell did a bunch of blue cats?
It's Ferngully in space.
Yeah, it is
Ferngully in space.
It's Dances with Wolves.
I was going to say it's Dances and Wolves.
It's all that stuff, and yet, holy shit, biggest movie of all time.
Well, you got
the Way of the Water last night for the first time.
Is that your first time seeing it?
Yeah, because I was like, what do I watch tonight? What do I was like, there's nothing really. I'm like, all right, this has been on Disney Plus for I don't know how long.
It's gonna be there for a while. So
and then I was like, okay, and I'm thinking it's like, great, it's the same movie over again, probably. And I'm like, actually, no, the visuals and the music were great together. And I'm talking 4K on my LG OLED, and it's beautiful. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is amazing to watch. Now, mind you, was I really running out to the theater initially to go see it? No, but the way everything blended visually and musically was great. Unfortunately, Horner died after the first Avatar, and he was intended to be on The Way of the Water, which is the second one, and for the third, but they used some of his score here and there.
Correct.
For themes, so he gets credited for it. So obviously he'll still be part of it, but unfortunately not. But I thought it was a good movie. The first one was innovative visually and definitely audio wise too. The second one just blew my mind visually and how it looked overall.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, let me tell you. And funny enough, when I saw Avatar 2, I was like, well, shit, you waited this long? But
there's a reason. Yeah.
There was a reason. Pandemic also didn't help. Just like a lot of these movies. But I mean, there was a reason that he just wanted to wait for the technology to be even better.
When's the next one coming out? 2049? Something?
2025. It's so slated, but I highly doubt it.
I think my grandkids bought tickets to it. But yeah, no, actually, because of the success of the second one, they're gonna make 5, because the whole thing was, if it wasn't as successful, then they were only gonna just do the 3. Yeah. It's crazy how that movie, and let's be honest, I mean, it's not a merchandising giant. Like, it is not Marvel or Star Wars or anything like that when it comes to that type of stuff, but somehow it resonates with people around the world for what it does. I think
he made a deal with the devil, is what I think. Every movie he makes, man, it's like, it's like,
I thought Home Alone was one that made a devil, Someone Hayek talks about in Dogma.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So Frank, anything with James Cameron? I mean, not James Cameron, James Horner, with Avatar, and do you like?
So I was actually thinking about Titanic.
Okay, go ahead.
And the fact that as many times as I've seen Titanic, because I've been married for a long time, and my wife likes to watch that movie.
Oh man,
we all know how that is.
If you're married, Titanic is part of your marriage.
Yeah, it's on a continuous loop somewhere.
You have our sympathies, Frank.
But my favorite part of the movie is, and it makes me cry every time, is when the band keeps playing as the ship is going down.
Sinking,
and they're like,
"Oh my god, yes,
gentlemen, shall we continue playing?"
Yeah.
Look at them. Heroes.
And from what I hear, that actually happened, or at least there are accounts of it actually happening. But I was glad that he kind of included that, because you're like, wow, these guys just know,
Right.
hey, listen, man, we're gonna die, might as well die
Let's do
playing
what we're
music.
doing.
What we
You know,
love, doing what we love.
what we love to do and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so Avatar, phenomenal, phenomenal movie. I when it first came out, I will say this, it was the best 3D movie ever made. And what I mean by that is when there was the big 3D craze where every movie theater had 3D glasses and every movie was coming out in 3D. It was the best movie ever made for that format, because it did not make you either feel queasy or in some cases like what is it, like some
Sometimes it's blurry, and it wasn't
sometimes
blurry.
it's blurry.
Yeah.
Sometimes what happens is that they do the 3D in post-production as opposed to having 3D cameras.
Correct.
But James Cameron decided, hey, I'm going to use every fucking technology I can to make this look as great as possible. And I would say, when you looked at it in 3D, you go, holy shit, this is what 3D technology should be for, or in how it looks like. And it was great for that. But the music was also great. I mean, it really had a lot of great, I would say, tones of indigenous sounds in it. And, and again, it's the whole James Horner thing where he likes to travel to these places to actually be as authentic as possible when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I'll put one on. It says Becoming One of the People, which is actually a nice piece that I always liked from his music. So here's a funny thing, right? So there are some people out there that, they're such big fans of Avatar that they want to live the Avatar life, and they dress up in the blue and with the ears and stuff. And they really want that whole Avatar thing happening. And I'm like, no, not for me. Except that when I listen to the music for a brief moment, I go, yeah, okay, I could do that, but that means I would have to have fucking headphones on all the time for me to listen to that, for me to even contemplate on doing that. But yeah, his music is great. And just so you guys know, I mean, so everybody out there knows, I mean, besides, Aliens and Titanic and Avatar and Braveheart and all that stuff, I mean, he's done Apollo 13, Commando, An American Tail, Willow. The Mask of Zorro, Cocoon, Batteries Not Included, Jumanji, The Rocketeer, The Magnificent Seven, the newest one that came out, with Chris Pratt and
and let's not forget the greatest of all, Humanoids from the Deep, man. How can you forget that one?
Humanoids from the Deep. Hey, that's a good movie.
That is popcorn drive-in movie if I ever saw one, man. I remember that movie on cable.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, he's had such a great career, and unfortunately he's not with us anymore. But it's unfortunate because we lost such a great talent when it comes to film music, which, it's something that I just love hearing his stuff so much. So yeah, he was actually our number 4. And our number 3, I think, is actually one of course, Patrick's favorite, Jerry Goldsmith.
Yes.
So
definitely.
So, I mean, Jerry Goldsmith, born from 1929 to 2004, was a pioneering and highly regarded American composer whose impact on film music is immeasurable. With his versatile style and innovative approach, Goldsmith crafted timeless scores that became an integral part of cinematic classics, from the iconic themes of The Twilight Zone to the pulse-pounding music of Alien, the first Alien. So we just spoke about, James Horner doing Aliens. And
Just
it's
to
such a big...
specify, Twilight Zone, the motion picture.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Twilight Zone, the motion picture. But it's funny how Alien and Aliens, even though their musics are slightly similar, but at the same time very different from each other, which is great also.
Yeah.
And of course, the majestic melodies of the First Night. If you ever saw the movie First Night, it's the Keen Arthur retelling with Sean Connery and Richard Gere. But let me tell you, I like that movie, but yeah, the music on that was also pretty good. So his composition showcased his mastery of diverse genres with a career spanning over 4 decades. Goldsmith received numerous accolades, including an Academy Award for The Omen, which if you listen to that thing, that shit is creepy. And his extraordinary musical legacy continues to inspire and resonate with audiences around the world. So let me tell you, his stuff, I've been listening to it for years, and one of the things that I think we agreed on not so long ago was the fact that Jerry Goldsmith and John Williams have a very similar style. There are times at certain pieces you go, wait a minute, was that John Williams or was that Jerry Goldsmith? So I'll start with you, Patrick. I mean, your take on him.
The thing about Goldsmith is he's changed his style very much since the 60s. I mean, I don't know if you remember Planet of the Apes, the original Planet of the Apes. That's Jerry Goldsmith there. Yeah. It's very different than what he evolved into in the late 70s and 80s. And eventually it's like it became his signature, his signature sound. But yeah, it's Planet of the Apes. Totally different than what Goldsmith did, but love the soundtrack on that. And it's almost like an experimental soundtrack. If you listen to it, it's very uses a lot of sounds that aren't, it's not very customary to use in scores. And then movies like you said, Alien and the Omen trilogy, just great stuff on there. And then a few of my favorites are I don't know if you ever saw Rudy, which I think is one of the best soundtracks he's done. Yeah, the football movie Rudy. Great soundtrack on that movie.
I do not remember that one, but I mean, I'll have to definitely check it out.
Yeah, it's one of his best soundtracks. And of course, Star Trek. He redefined the theme of Star Trek with the motion picture, which is so iconic.
79. Yep.
And, if you want to get an example of those movies where you're like, is that John Williams or is that Goldsmith? Check out Poltergeist. Right. He definitely did that with Poltergeist. It definitely had that John Williams sound, but obviously it was all Goldsmith. I mean, just one of the greatest composers of all time. So.
Yeah, he's a go-to for me for like certain movies that I just like. I think like before we try to record this, the last time I believe you two had a discussion about which one was darker and better, which was like the Omen or the Omen 2. And I think we settled on the Omen 2 as being the clear victor.
3.
Actually, it was Final Conflict. I just think the music in that is far more grandiose, would be the word, while the Omen is more personal and creepy. But it is. Because it starts out in the Omen, he's a little kid, and then by the third one, he's already like ready. He's a politician ready to take over the world. Right. And it's far more grandiose, and I mean they're both about equal, but I mean I personally prefer the Final Conflict.
Right. I mean, we'll definitely talk about that, and we'll put his stuff on in just a moment. But the first one I want to put on, which I never knew was him, and I've heard it in different shows or movies or something like that. And it was always like this part was almost a parody. Like, especially I heard this in The Simpsons one time, and I was like, it's a parody, but they actually took his music, know? So, and it's the one from Patton. Which fantastic.
That's an awesome soundtrack too.
Yeah.
Awesome
so
theme.
I'll put that on, but I love this one because, I mean, if anybody knows the history of Patton, I mean, great general, but also crazy.
Yeah, he's wearing like a poopy sack.
You
Thought he was
know,
reincarnated and all
yeah,
that.
he thought he was reincarnated, and I always felt like this piece of music probably made him, like you could think of him just standing there looking over a field, thinking that, oh, I was here, hundreds of years ago, commanding another army or something like that, so, but it's great. I mean, it's just fantastic music. What it always seems to me is like that those trumpets don't seem to go very well with the back part of the music, and then all of a sudden everything comes in together.
Yeah, and this kicks in, man, which is very American, like John Philip Sousa sounding. It's great.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That is absolutely fantastic because it just starts like so slow, and it just builds up to that grandeur of just Americana.
Yeah.
That it has in there. But the next one that we were talking about was, of course, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say the delay in the trumpets themselves when they come in.
Correct.
That's a recording technique, and I would love to see them do that live, just to see how they were going to get that to echo as best they can.
I think it's just, it's just the way it gets played. But I mean, it's very talented people with a trumpet that just, can make that sound like it's an echo.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, but the next one is the one that we were talking about, which is, of course, The Omen. So Patrick liked the third one, which is called The Final Conflict, and he likes it because it has more of a, would say, John Williams kind of sound. But his first one is the one that he actually got nominated for and won an Oscar. And I can't believe that that's the only, I think that was the only nomination that he got and the only Oscar he ever won.
I'm not sure.
But I think that's, so he only won one Oscar. Which I'm very surprised that Jerry Goldsmith only won Oscar, and he wins it for this, which, don't get me wrong, I think it's still great music, but I mean, he's had such amazing music, which has never been recognized by the Academy, which I think is devastating. So, but mine has always been, of course, Omen 2, because to me, the movie is about a kid that comes into realization of who he is and what his role in the world is, which is basically to burn the world and and battle God and all these things, so I'll put this one on. It's again a very creepy sound, very satanic sound, and of course this is what got him his Oscar.
Look at that. It almost sounds like Praca 5 or something,
I will say this. I think the music is what made the movie. There's sometimes
definitely.
There are times that there's certain movies that are just great that, they have a soundtrack and it's like, okay, the soundtrack was cool, but the movie was great. Some movies, the soundtrack is where you go, you know what? It was a good movie, but the fucking music, it was just phenomenal. or, wow, it's what made it creepy. Just like, John Carpenter and Halloween, where, that's such a legendary, iconic soundtrack. And till this day, it remains to be what I would call the real Halloween theme out there, when it comes
That's
to
right.
music.
My
But
ringtone forever.
his ringtone forever. But yeah, so that's actually how he got his first Oscar. Now for the next one, and again, this is another one that James Horner worked on, but of course Jerry Goldsmith did the first film, Star Trek the Motion Picture.
Absolutely great theme, man.
Yeah, he did nail it on that. One thing very unique about that, so he often incorporates unconventional or unique instruments into his scores to create distinct and memorable sounds. For example, he used an electronic instrument called the blaster beam for his iconic score in Star Trek the Motion Picture, which created an otherworldly sound or whatever that is. Blaster beam. I mean, it's freaking crazy. So this is another example of, having a composer that likes to go outside of traditional musical instruments in order to get, the desired effect that he needs. But I'll definitely put this on, and I'm sure this one is the one I like the most. So besides the iconic sound of Star Trek, this is my favorite, which is the main title and the Klingon battle. Yeah, so I let this one run a little longer because I wanted to get to this point, which is the theme of the Klingons.
The Klingons, when they get attacked by whatever it is. What was it, V'ger? Or?
V'ger, yeah.
V'ger.
Right. V'ger. Those little clapping things in the background. Those look like those little noisemakers that used to have back in the day, those little metal things.
Yeah, so that theme of the Klingons has become, like, besides the main title that now is, synonymous with the Next Generation. But that Klingon battle theme has always, like, every time the Klingons come on, you always hear that little theme also there, which I think is great. So yeah, one thing that you guys probably don't know is that, so despite his immense talent and success, Goldsmith remained humble and down to earth throughout his career. So he was known for being very generous with his time and knowledge, often mentoring and providing guidance to young composers entering the industry, which I think is great when you have somebody of that talent that they can actually share a lot of their stuff to people that are trying to get into the industry, especially in the movie industry, which is such a can be a what was that?
Very cutthroat.
It is. It's extremely cutthroat. It's extremely vicious. I think
Right. They don't generally help each other.
They don't. And what I mean by that is they try to, like, their whole thing, like in a lot of key places in the film industry, you have to work yourself up there and you have to kill yourself. And especially when you're on set, and I'm sure, listen, I've been on set. Patrick has been on set. I think, Mark, you've been on a few sets, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I've been on a couple.
You've been on a few sets. Have you, Frank?
No.
No? Okay. So the experience has always been where you see all these people working, and then the director, of course, is the king of kings, the god of gods. And then, you have the production assistant that has to get him, his latte or his drink very quickly, and has to, and whatever they want. I mean, I have seen things where it's like, wow, I could never do that ever again. Because at my age, I would tell the director, go fuck yourself. Don't get me wrong, there's some directors out there that I hear that are just very generous with their time, and they're and they're not like that. But when you hear about directors that are just a terror to work with, Michael Bay, you don't hear the nicest things when it comes to sets, and things like that. So, but for somebody with that much talent to say, you know what, I will gladly help you and give you all the knowledge I can, I think that's actually very cool. I mean, fantastic, when it comes to that. The next one I'm going to play, which I think, Frank, you and I went to see this together when it first came out.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Yes.
So from Total Recall, I remember seeing that. That was a fucking great movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger and the three boob girl. And
it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger and the three boobed girl.
Sharon Stone.
That should be a title right there, or by itself. I think that's the next title to his memoirs.
Oh jeez.
Wow.
Muscles and three boobs.
Yeah, right.
Triceratops.
Triceratops.
And midgets.
Oh my God. Little people now. All right. Let's be very
all right.
But no, it's interesting how that was a great movie. And again, Jerry Goldsmith did a fantastic job with that particular movie, where again, I think the music really drove the action of that movie. I mean, what did you think, Frank?
No, I agree. I remember when we were sitting there in the theater and it started off and we were like, what in the hell is going on? Because you start off on Mars and then all of a sudden he wakes up and you're like, it's all a dream. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So,
or is it?
Like it starts off like you think he died in the first part of the movie because face mass cracks and his eyes start
bulging
like,
out and stuff. What?
Yeah.
Those were the great days. Yeah, those.
Nice.
Yeah.
Those were the great days of practical effects. I think, which was fantastic. Right. And another Philip K. Dick book, which we didn't know. I mean, I remember when we found out, Frank, you and I were like, yo, he did Blade Runner. He did Total. Philip K. Dick was crazy, but I'll put that on. I mean, it's fantastic.
Conan.
That's what I was gonna say.
Wow.
There's like a little bit of a synthesizer in the back there, which is kind of cool. But yeah, you're right. It does sound like Conan in the beginning.
When it first started,
yeah. When it first starts, it's like almost a Conan vibe. And then, of course, it goes into its own theme.
I think it was the first three notes or something like that sound like Conan. Then it broke off into its own thing.
Yeah, but it also had the anvil sound, or almost like that metal sound.
Like Conan.
And of course, like James Horner did, which I think is actually fantastic on that. So, the guy is, has always done fantastic music, and It's just drives his stuff great. Another thing about Goldsmith. So, in addition to his prolific work in film and television, Goldsmith also composed music for concert halls. He wrote several concert pieces, including a fanfare for the opening of the Walt Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles, and a symphony titled Music of Orchestra, commissioned by the National Symphony Orchestra. So these compositions showcase his versatility and talent beyond the realm of film, which is fantastic also. I love when I hear stuff like that, these composers have done other things that you probably never knew. Like, you probably hear it and you go, oh, cool sound. But then later you read and you go, oh, so he created that sound? Just like John Williams when he did the CNN theme. I was like, get the fuck out of here. Yep. I remember that. I was like, wait, that was Johnny?
That was Johnny Williams.
That was Johnny Billy? So
let's not forget also The Mummy. He also did The Mummy, which was one of the great. Oh my
God, man. I love that.
That soundtrack's great.
That soundtrack is sweet.
Gremlins also.
Yeah, so he's done some fantastic stuff. I would say, let me see if I could actually do this the right way, because I want you guys to hear it, but there's a part in The Mummy that really it takes off, which I think is fantastic, it's called the Sand Volcano, but at like 2 minutes and 20 seconds, it really sounds fantastic. It's what gives that movie its signature sound, I think. I'll put that on right now. Yeah, so it's really cool, man. I like.
There's that classic Goldsmith.
Yeah, this
sound,
is a very classic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's I always loved that soundtrack because of that little melody right there that it had. And I made an actually mistake. So it wasn't 220, it was around 3 minutes and something seconds. But the trumpets also was a very signature Goldsmith kind of thing, which I like. But for those of you who may even have the old DVD of The Mummy, when you put the disc in, if you still have a DVD player, I mean, for those of you who might have one or not.
Yeah, I got a PS5. It plays everything.
Okay. So if you put the DVD, and I think I remember it's the DVD. I don't know if the Blu-ray does it or anything like that, but I remember the DVD. When you put it in and the menu comes up, they did something really cool that nobody else has ever done, which is they let the entire soundtrack of the entire movie play on the menu.
So you could just leave it on.
You could just leave. Yeah, you could just leave it on the menu,
awesome,
and you could listen to the entire soundtrack, which I thought was a really cool thing. When I found that out, I was like, "That's a great way to listen to music and not have to go buy it."
Oh, that brings up another point. Also, if you have, I think I don't know what versions of Star Trek, the motion picture they have now, but if you put in Star Trek, they used to have the overture in the beginning. Remember, it was one of the last movies that had an overture.
Yes, so that's the director's cut. So the director's cut has an overture, which is, I don't know, 5 minutes long or something like that.
Which is really cool, man, because it's just listening to
with a black screen.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way movies used to be while you were waiting for the movie to start. Yeah,
it's a black screen. I remember when I first saw it, and I was like, okay, is there anything gonna pop up? But all you heard was the music, and you sit there for a while, and after a while, you're like, this is kind of cool. I'm going to listen to this music. And then all of a sudden it just stops and boom, goes right into the Star Trek theme, which I thought was great. But again, other great compositions for Jerry Goldsmith. Gremlins, which I always loved that movie. Of course, Chinatown, Logan's Run, which I know Mark is a huge fan of Logan's Run.
Great movie.
I think
awesome movie.
Yeah. Poltergeist, one of my favorite movies out there, especially horror films. And of course, there's that whole thing where
who directed it?
Yeah, who really directed?
Spielberg.
We
who
know who
really-
directed. You can
we-
tell what style that is.
You could
man.
tell who
definitely
directed
see.
that movie.
Yeah.
Which is funny too, because he didn't work with John Williams on it. So
No, exactly.
I think they already had the soundtrack and the composer already picked out for this movie, and I don't think he knew he was going to be directing it until it actually came out. And
yeah,
yeah.
But again, Jerry Goldsmith and John Williams have that signature,
Mhm.
almost that same sound to
Yeah.
it. So I'm sure,
And he worked with him in the Twilight Zone because he did a segment in the Twilight Zone. Spielberg did, and
that is
he worked with
correct.
Goldsmith.
So, and of course, Jerry Goldsmith, very well known for the soundtrack for the movie Alien, which again,
Mhm.
another creepy sound, when it
Mhm.
comes to that. LA Confidential, Mulan, Air Force One, which we just did a Harrison Ford top 5,
Yeah.
So, and I just got to see that movie the other day again, and it's still a good movie. So the soundtrack on that was also fantastic. So yeah,
Mhm.
Jerry Goldsmith, legendary composer who I feel that,
And you should check out Rudy's soundtrack, man. That is
I
just
will
a
definitely
great.
check that out. And
Check out especially the one track on there called Tryouts. That's great.
Tryouts. Okay. So the next one is, of course, one of my all-time favorites. And it's because of all the music that he has covered. I know that Patrick has not been very familiar with a lot of his music, so it's not one of his favorites. Hopefully he can listen to some more, but it's Hans Zimmer. So Hans Florian Zimmer, I didn't know that his middle name was Florian, born in 1957, is a visionary and highly influential film composer. With a career spanning decades, Zimmer's bold and distinctive scores have made an indelible impact on the world of cinema. Known for blending orchestral and electronic elements, his music, ranging from The Lion King to Inception to the Dark Knight trilogy, captivates audiences with its immersive and unforgettable soundscape. So Zimmer's remarkable talent and ability to create powerful music narratives have solidified his status as one of the greatest composers in the industry. Academy Awards, I didn't mention some of the Academy Awards on some of the other ones as much. So, and you know what? Let me go back to that very quickly, and I apologize for that. But James Horner had 10 nominations, 2 wins. Jerry Goldsmith, oh, wait, I skipped somebody. Danny Elfman, 4 nominations, 0 wins, which I think that's a travesty right there. But yeah, so Jerry Goldsmith, 4 nominations, no wins. He has won a crap ton of other awards, but the Academy Award he has not won. What I would say is James Horner got nominated 10 times. 2 of those were wins, and those 2 actually for the same movie, which was Titanic. For the score, and of course he partnered up with Celine Dion for the music. And so since that also won an Academy Award, he also won for that. Jerry Goldsmith, 18 nominations and 1 win, which was, of course, like I said, for The Omen. And Academy Awards for Hans Zimmer has been 12 nominations and 2 wins. His latest win was for Dune. What's your take on Hans Zimmer? Because, I mean, this is a composer that I really love his style. I love the way, the music that he comes up with. What is it that you guys have experienced? I'll start with you, Mark. What's your take on Hans Zimmer?
my thoughts and feelings about him are pretty much like the modernized composer that's out there now. Mind you, he's still, if you look at the year that he was born in comparison to a lot of the other composers that we are discussing, Jerry Goldsmith obviously being older,
Right.
obviously when same thing with once we get to him, the man himself, but for Star Wars, but I think he's more of a modernized kind of composer in the sense of using, very similar to Jerry Goldsmith in a sense of taking on like different instruments, but also incorporating a new modern age within the compositions. And it you could tell because of, like, think about when you have virtuosos that are out there like Tina Guo as a modern cellist with her craziness and getting that involved with that, and
Right.
her take for like with the Wonder Woman score. Not to point out like a bad movie, but BVS and all those movies in 1984 and Wonder Woman movie was really good. But the solo itself in there to introduce it and very authentic and very good. Movies like Interstellar and stuff like that were just so unique. He's known with the modern aged kind of like sci-fi ventures, but I love his work with Pirates of the Caribbean. It's just it also has a classical flair to him.
It
So
does. It does have like a very old Hollywood almost sound to it. Like that grandeur and fun kind of adventure sound. So yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, he could go from one end to the other, but I see a lot of like the newer stuff like that with, especially with Dune,
Right.
that being like a futuristic kind of style and composition.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And, so Hans Zimmer's musical career began in the world of pop and rock music. He was a keyboardist and synthesizer player for the band, the Buggles.
Yeah.
The Buggles.
Yes.
Right. Known for their hit
Video
single,
Killed the Radio
Video
Star.
Killed the Radio
The
Star, which
very
was
first video ever.
the very first music
Play on
video
MTV,
on
right.
MTV. Yeah.
Mhm.
So back, if you look at that video, you see young Hans Zimmer in the back I think in some kind of leather jumpsuit or whatever it is that he has, doing his thing back there. I thought that was actually very funny. Frank, anything with Hans Zimmer in terms of music that you like from him?
I like a lot of what he's done. One of my favorite movies was The Last Samurai, which
Fantastic,
is,
man.
Great movie on its own, but the music does help add to that story and the elements that you're seeing
Correct.
there. Also Gladiator. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, like you were saying, Last Samurai, there's a scene where Tom Cruise is,
Right.
or like these two kids are basically practicing with wooden swords, and so one of the kids gets the sword smacked out of his hands, and Tom Cruise is there, and he picks it up, and he all of a sudden, tries to practice with the kid, and so then like the second in charge of the samurai army there basically found it to be more like of an insult, and so decides to teach Tom Cruise a lesson, and Tom Cruise, character being stubborn where he didn't want to, submit. The music on that was just so powerful because it just really it made that scene where you felt sorry for Tom Cruise for getting the shit beat out of him.
basically.
I mean, he got pounded with the wooden sword,
and them things hurt.
Oh, you would know.
Yes, I would.
You would definitely know about that. I think we covered that in another podcast. But you also mentioned, Gladiator, which I think is one of his biggest films out there. So, his breakthrough was with the movie Rain Man in 1988 with Tom Cruise also. And that actually won him his first Academy Award, which I thought that was great. So I'm going to put actually Gladiator because it's such a great song. And he always collaborates with this vocalist. Her name is Lisa Gerrard. Lisa Gerrard has a very unique voice. And if you ever listen to her stuff, she's come out in a lot of different films. Done, but she did one. You guys ever saw the movie The Mist?
Yeah, yes. Great.
Remember at the
I love the ending of that movie.
Remember at the end?
Yeah,
that music with that vocal sound, that's her. So
nice.
She is the one that that's actually like, that the ending is fantastic. So she's actually in a lot of the music for Gladiator, and I'll put that on right now. that is like a fantastic soundtrack. I mean, I love that soundtrack. Everything from the beginning of the movie when, you know, the big war or big battle that they had. That was also really cool. Especially the way it started, which it kind of showed the tension of what was about to happen and things like that, but how cool and calm he was and how respected he, Russell Crowe's character was. I thought that was fucking fantastic. I mean, it's just amazing music that he did there. You, Patrick, you don't, like, again, you haven't had that much, I guess I would say, experience with Zimmer.
No, I've had plenty of experience with Zimmer. I know his stuff very well. I mean, I know Rain Man, I know Twister, I know True Romance, I know Point of No Return. Yes, it just doesn't grab me quite as well as other composers out there.
All right.
But I mean, there are a handful of songs out there, or soundtracks out there that I do love. Like you said, Gladiator. Gladiator is great, amazing soundtrack. I actually had that soundtrack. I have it on my computer, and I listen to it every once in a while. What do you call it? Pirates of the Caribbean, also a great soundtrack. The Dark Knight, also a great soundtrack. So it's not so much that, it's just a matter of taste,
Okay.
Like nothing against him, I mean, I'm familiar with his stuff. It's like pretty much almost every movie that comes out. It's like every month there's
a Hans Zimmer movie out there, and that's funny because this man really fucking works. That's how
Lion King. He did Lion King also.
The guy has done. It's just insane the amount of work that he's actually done. But let's be honest. I mean, he's very well known. For one of the best superhero movies out there, which is the Dark Knight trilogy. Mm-hmm. And so let me tell you, I love the soundtrack to The Dark Knight. Freaking fantastic. It just sounds absolutely amazing. I'll put some of that on so you could hear it. I would say this. When The Dark Knight came out, we were so used to Danny Elfman's Batman. Yeah. They were like, well, how are they going to top that? And while it is, I don't think it topped it. I think it's actually just a different take on it, but it is a beautifully great take on it where to me, I think they both have their own signature sounds for Batman. And I also think that they're two completely different styles of Batman. One is supposed to be based in the real world, while the other one is based on the Tim Burton Gothic world.
Right.
And the music reflects that. So, but this one actually was, I mean, it's just great. It's just, I think he did such a great job with this. If you ever see him in concert, I have a Blu-ray with one of his concerts, and I have to say, his concerts are freaking phenomenal. Like, really, really great. I wish I could see some of these composers, because some of these composers, that's what they do. They do, to sustain, I guess, money coming in and stuff like that, but they actually do some concerts, and especially overseas, from what I hear, that's where they're most popular. So I met a composer by the name of Elliot Goldenthal, and I remember talking to him, and I got to go to his house, and, and because I was doing some work for him. And I got to sit down with him, and I got to, talk to him and, talk about the business and things like that. So one of the things he said was, a lot of these composers do these concerts And I asked him, I said, why don't we see that much of them? He goes, they're not as popular in the United States as they are like in Europe. In Europe, it is insane on how popular those type of concerts are, unless you have John Williams. John Williams is just popular. John Williams could be popular in the middle of the Congo. Okay.
It's just pop music.
You know, so it's just amazing, you know, the stuff that he does. But no, but Hans Zimmer, the same thing, you know, he does some fantastic music out there. And I don't know if you guys have seen Dune yet.
Yeah.
Did you see it, Frank?
First Dune,
yeah. Well, not Frank Herbert's
part one,
the new one.
The new one.
The new one, yes.
The new one, yeah. So I remember when I first saw the trailer to that and the music kicked in, and I was like, oh, this is going to be special on how good that is. Mark, did you ever see Dune, the first Dune?
The original or the Dune?
The Dune that came out last year.
No, it's on my to-do list.
Oh my God.
You got to watch it.
I'm going to have to throw a shoe at you.
I know. Actually, you'll laugh. My friend Ben right now is watching Dune for the first time.
Oh, okay.
He hasn't gotten to watch it either, too. So.
Yeah. When it first came out, I didn't go see it in the theater. I should have gone see it because it came out on HBO Max in the theater at the same time.
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah. So I was like, all right. So and then of course my roommate he has like this $40,000 freaking home theater system, so we decided to watch it together in his system. And the way it started, we both looked at each other. We went, oh yeah, this is good. You know, so this is actually Hans Zimmer's second Academy Award, and he actually came up with different instruments. Heard him in a few interviews where he actually invented some of these instruments in order for him to get the signature sound that he wanted out of this. So I'll put this one on so you can hear it. It's actually pretty cool. Yeah, one of the great things is that he has a lot, like Hans Zimmer uses a lot of percussion in his music. And so he has some great percussion, you know, areas in his music on this soundtrack, but the use of choral music also in that. It's just it's a very, very unique type of soundtrack to hear. You have to listen to the music to really appreciate it. And for some reason, they came out with two different versions of the soundtrack. There was a one for the movie, and then there was a additional one with more music on it, which was actually very interesting. So yeah, great soundtrack. I'm actually, you know what I'm going to put on? I'm going to put on the Last Samurai one, the one that you like, because you have to hear it. It just sounds so damn great. And it's like I said, it's that part where, you know, he gets his ass handed to him, but it has such a great sound to it that I just love the way it sounds. I mean, it is fantastic. So I'll put that on right now. I love that piece. Um, and I love that part of the film, like we were talking about, because it's a part where, with traditional Japanese culture, once you're down and you've been told you're down, you stay down and you respect the person in charge. But in his case, he kept getting up, showing that he wasn't going to take their shit, even if he got beat up.
America.
And yeah, it's basically that's exactly what it. You know what? Anybody in the movie that would be like America. But it's a beautiful scene too. I mean, I just love the way it was filmed, and the music really did a great job on that. So, and then of course, as we all know, Hans Zimmer, I mean, is responsible for music like Man of Steel, which is one of my all-time favorite soundtracks. Like if I have to put my top 10, it'll be in my top 10. It's probably in my top 5. Top Gun Maverick, which when it came out last year, there's a scene, there's the what do they call that? The Dark Star theme, which is really cool. And I got to see that on a YouTube video actually being performed in the studio when they were recording it. I thought it was like one of the coolest things to see, because it was just such a nice piece. But he did, like I said, his first nomination, I think, and win was for Rain Man. He also did No Time to Die, The Lion King, The Da Vinci Code, Black Hawk Down, Blade Runner 2049, Inception, Pearl Harbor, Crimson Tide, which is also a great, really good soundtrack on that. And of course, hundreds of the other things that he has done. And Patrick, you mentioned something about Pirates of the Caribbean. So I think we should end this section with a fun one from his filmography. This is one of those soundtracks that just made that movie fun.
Yeah.
That just screams to me old Hollywood adventure, Errol Flynn.
Yep.
That's exactly what it screams to me. And he captured it perfectly.
He captured that perfectly. Yeah. I think, especially when Johnny Depp at the end was fighting with Barbosa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so which I thought that was a cool effect, man. The way they were like going from the shadows to the light, and he was turning from human to skeleton.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, that was such a great scene. But the music made that scene also what it is, which is also, it was this theme there too. But it was just such a great piece of music for that. And like you were saying, it just screams old Hollywood when it comes to that.
Well, I just love that soundtrack. I actually have the box set for the first 3 films. So yeah, that to me, and it honestly, it's like if that was playing over the loudspeaker at Disney for the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, or was playing throughout the ride itself, it would have me all jazzed.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but when you go to Disney or you go to Universal, the movies that they have, I guess, showcased, I would say, the soundtrack of the movie, when it plays, it does get you jazzed up. And I think that's on purpose, that they go, listen, not only are we going to pick this ride from this movie, or we're going to do this ride from this movie, but the reason we're doing it is not because not only the movie was great, but the music is so awesome that when we play it in the park, the first thing people are going to go is like, oh, I want to go to that ride. Because as soon as they hear it, they go, shit, I want to do that. I remember, what was it? I mean, they have so many. Oh, Back to the Future. right? So
Yeah.
Back to the Future
Yes,
in
yeah.
Universal, as soon as you heard that theme, you're like, oh, we gotta
Oh,
go try
yeah.
we gotta go to the
They
ride.
still have it there. They don't have the ride anymore, but you can still hear it playing.
They still have
throughout
the music there? Okay,
Yep,
because
they
I
do.
know
They sure do, man.
what is
Well,
it that they have playing there
own it.
now? I forgot what it is.
They have Men in Black sometimes. They still have Beetlejuice. They have another song. Damn, I'm trying to think what movie it's from. It's God, I can't think. There's a lot of songs in there. They're not with movies that have rides there at all.
Right.
And Back to the Future is one of them, but there's a few other ones on there. They're just great
But
themes. They picked out some good ones.
But is that ride still there?
No, the ride is not still there. It is
It's
now
no longer there.
Simpsons ride.
That's what I meant, because what they did was they converted that dome
Mhm.
to the Simpsons, so that the Simpsons
It's still the same type of ride. They just changed the
theme.
They just changed the theme and the 3D film that you watch while you're watching it.
Another one, which of course, now that we're gonna get into the next person who is our number one, and it's I think everybody's number one, which is John Williams.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that I remember is in Universal hearing E.T.'s.
They still have that playing there too.
And
they still have it.
They still have that ride.
Yeah, they have. The ride is still there. From what I heard, they were going to change it years ago. And Spielberg, being the king of Hollywood, said, "You change this, and I will make your life a living hell for you." I don't know if he said that, but he basically, in other words, he said, "You're not taking this out." It's like you took Jaws out, you're not taking this one out, and they've kept it there, and it's still one of the best hits they've had there.
It's
I don't know if he threatened them that way, but he basically said, "I want to keep this there." And Universal, they said, "Whatever you say, we're keeping it here."
Yeah,
and it's still there, and they got the music there and everything.
I have to say, I mean, if you have all of you been on that ride?
No.
Yeah, I've been on it several times.
I've been on it, and it's a simple ride. It's basically you're in this
it's
bicycle.
It's basically Peter Pan. You know the Peter Pan ride in Disney World. Same concept. You're on a suspended thing going over.
So you're basically pedaling just like Elliot is and stuff like that, and you're going through the forest. So you go through this. It's basically like this little roller coaster ride, which is not fast or anything, but as you go through there, you get to see E.T., you get to see like the ship, you get to see all these really cool things from the movie. But as it's going, you're hearing the theme music. And it just gets you so excited. You become a kid again. You're just like, what the fuck, man? It's just, and that's just the power that John Williams has. So John Towner Williams, I didn't know that his middle name was Towner. Did anybody know that?
Nope.
Because I didn't know.
I don't know.
So born in 1932 as an American composer, conductor, and pianist. In a career that has spanned 7 decades, he has composed some of the most popular, recognizable, and critically acclaimed film scores in cinema history of all time. So, the man has been nominated 53 times for the Academy Award, has won 5 times. He is the oldest living person with the most nominations. The only person that has more nominations than him is Disney himself. And he has won 25 Grammys. Wow. I mean, you got that many Grammys. You're like, I don't know what shelves I'm going to put this in now. I mean, they're going to be.
How many Oscars did he win?
5.
Oscars? 5. Wow.
5. But he won 25 Grammys. I guarantee you some of those Grammys are door stoppers in his house.
Yeah.
So John Williams, initially inspired to be a jazz pianist, he studied piano at Juilliard School and played jazz piano in various bands before transitioning to the world of music. Was a conductor for the Boston Pop Orchestra from 1980 to 1993. During his tenure, he brought a fresh energy to the orchestra and introduced a broader range of music, including film scores, to his repertoire. So in addition to his film work, John Williams has composed concert pieces. One notable example of his concerto for cello and orchestra, which premiered in 1994 and was written for the renowned cellist Yo-Yo Ma. So I don't know if you guys have ever listened to that CD. It is fantastic. He's a phenomenal cellist there. So in addition to his film compositions, Williams has also composed music for the Olympic Games. So whenever somebody hears the Olympics and hears that extended Olympic fanfare, that was written by John Williams. He composed the official theme for the 1984 Summer Olympics held in Los Angeles, as well as the theme for the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta and the 2002 Olympics in Salt Lake City. He also composed the CNN theme, which also features
James Earl Jones.
James Earl Jones.
Yep.
Exactly. So despite his extraordinary success, John Williams has remained known for his humility and modesty. He often downplays his achievements and prefers to let his music speak for itself. And Williams is highly regarded not only for his immense talent, but also for his genuine down-to-earth personality. And like I told you guys, his music was my first introduction to film music. Once again, I'll ask you guys your experience with John Williams and what he means to you, because this man means everything to me when it comes to music in general, and especially with film music. I have him in such a high pedestal. I mean, the day that, and the guy's what, 90?
Yep.
He's somewhere up there, man.
He doesn't have that long.
Yeah, and he just did Indiana Jones, the latest one.
He did Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and we'll talk about that in a moment because I find it interesting. There's something there that we'll talk about, but what's your experience with some of his music, what it does to you, what it makes you feel like, what makes you love film because of that? I mean, whoever wants to start, go.
I mean, for me, my first experience with him was Star Wars.
Right.
And just sitting in the theater at 8 years old and not really knowing anything about Star Wars other than, it's got a nice poster. It's called Star Wars,
Right.
You're like sitting there and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to see. And then it comes in with the ding, and you're like,
that fanfare. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That you're already like excited, but now you start hearing the music and it just makes it like tenfold. And from then on, you're like in there. You're just like, whatever happens on screen, they could be throwing poop at each other. I'm still good with it. I'm still good with it.
Yeah. Ooh. What movie did you watch, man?
Really?
Oh my God, man.
As long as John Williams is doing
the 70s.
Yeah.
As long as John Williams is playing, monkeys could fling poop at me and I'll be okay with it.
Yeah, really.
Oh my God.
2001: A Space Odyssey, they're breaking bones.
Yeah, monkeys throwing poop at each other.
So Frank, were there any other movies that, when you saw when you were young that surprised you that it was John Williams, or did you, what is it? What other movies actually besides Star Wars just kind of boom got you there?
Probably the other one is Jaws.
Okay.
Again, this is one of those movies that it was around the summer blockbusters. It was a new thing for us back then. You're probably never really going to see that again these days.
Right.
But standing in a line waiting to get into a movie that was around like a building or down the street or something like that, and you're waiting to see this movie, and then so simple, the theme from Jaws, where it's just that
two notes.
Yeah. And with that makes the movie, because if you take that theme out of Jaws, it's just another shark movie.
Yeah.
If you take that theme out of Jaws, it's probably a shitty movie.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I think that the acting with Richard Dreyfuss and everybody else in there was great, but no, it's like you were saying, the music is what made music. Yeah. So Patrick, what's your I know that you are a big John Williams fan just like I am. What is it that that makes this man almost a part of your family.
Well, like probably like you and Frank and Mark, like the guys, you guys here. It's like I mean, I was lucky enough to grow up in an era when all these amazing movies came out. I mean, in the 70s and 80s. So you
Correct.
can't deny it. These movies came out.
Oh
And
yeah.
the majority of these movies were intertwined with John Williams, and John Williams was intertwined with these movies. So that just makes it, I mean, an experience in itself. And I believe it was, I think Jaws came out in '75, and but I believe
Right.
I was living in Colombia at the time, a short time with my aunt.
Okay.
And Jaws came out. I remember it was a movie theater that had no ceiling, it had no roof, so it was just stars. I don't know what they did when it rained, but
What the?
yeah, it was weird. And I saw it in a Colombian movie theater in Spanish, and Jaws came on, and my aunt took me to this. And when that theme came on, I was just like, I mean, that was just when the theme came on, that's when the shark was on there, even though the shark was not on the screen. You could tell something
Correct.
was going to happen.
Yes.
And that's the first exposure I had to John Williams, and it kind of intrigued me. And then, of course, just like Frank, my mom took me to see Star Wars. I was back in the States at the time, and then took me to see Star Wars in '77. And that's when it blew me away. When you see that Lucasfilm presents in those blue letters, and then you have that pause, just a black screen for a few seconds, and then you see these gold letters, these yellow letters pop on the screen, and that fanfare, and then you see the crawling text, and you're like, wow, man, what an intro to a movie. I mean, it couldn't have been better.
Right.
And ever since then, it's like pretty much the '70s, '80s, and early '90s is when I think John Williams was really shining. And then as these filmmakers started getting more mature in their subject matter, like John Williams started straying away from fantasy and adventure and stuff and started getting to more serious films. John Williams started settling down, and the scores were becoming more serious, but they were still great, you know?
Right.
I mean, you had in the '70s, you had Close Encounters, you had Jaws, you had Superman the movie, which I think is one of my favorite soundtracks.
Correct.
And Raiders of the Lost Ark, obviously that too. But then slowly started getting into movies like Born on the 4th of July and Schindler's List and, Saving Private Ryan, which were also amazing movies as well. But he really shines. I mean, for me, he really shines with fantastical movies and adventure. And that's how it started for me.
He had a period during the '70s and especially the '70s and '80s where a lot of these blockbuster movies that Steven Spielberg made. And that's the other thing I was going to say, like Steven Spielberg and John Williams are kind of like, it's like bread and butter, man. They just go together.
Yeah.
Just like James Horner and James Cameron or, Tim Burton and Danny Elfman. But the one thing I would say is he came on at a time where it was the best time for movies. We got to see movies that were basically experiments in visual effects, storytelling, and they were so successful because we got to see things we have never seen on the screen. It was something that was fantastic. You're like, holy crap, never seen anything like that. You have to go see this movie. And then with those movies, of course, you had a John Williams score accompanied to that made that movie even better. So I thought that was actually fantastic. I mean, it's just like you said. Mark, your experience with John Williams, I'm sure, again, you said, with Star Wars or anything like that, but was there anything else besides the Star Wars or Jaws from John Williams that,
Not really. It was always Star Wars. It was like literally you grew up on it.
Okay.
And from the time that you saw that first crawl, and obviously that was my first experience, Star Wars wasn't anticipated as being such a blockbuster hit, but as soon as you think about the movie, you think about the music. And the one thing I have to say is if you ever look like you guys are saying, if you ever watch Jaws without the music, it's a really boring film.
Yes.
The music is another character in the film.
That is correct.
And it's very important. And it's as if like any movie that John Williams touches, he is part of that movie. And it gives it character, gives it flavor, and then you just enjoy it. But you distinctly know his music once you hear it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely
you could be like you could have never heard seen the movie, but you could hear the music and know right away who it is.
Yes.
And he is definitely like a classic style composer, because he was born in the early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
So as we all know, he's like 90 years old now, or 91 at this point.
Yeah.
But he was at the time when we started getting the first like real compositions, like with King Kong.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And that particular composer, and he comes from that ilk, and I think that's what we get, is that classic taste of Hollywood anytime
Correct.
you hear John Williams.
Exactly. And I think one of his biggest influence was Steiner, I believe.
Yes, Max Steiner.
Max Steiner,
one of my favorites.
Yeah, he's been one of his big influences, and of course, for those of you out there that don't know, he also did stuff for television. So I mean, just like the theme for Lost in Space was also a John Williams, thing. And he played piano in what was it? West Side Story. The original West Side Story, the one that, came out with Rita Moreno. And so he was the pianist in that movie.
Wow.
Which I find interesting, because then I believe he also did some music compositions. I don't think, did he do the latest West Side Story, the one that Steven Spielberg got? I don't think he did.
I do not know.
I don't know.
I doubt
That's
it.
something to look at.
Yeah, I don't think he did, but he actually did contribute some stuff, because since he was the original pianist on that. But like I said before, one of the things that got me into film music was actually hearing the album for The Empire Strikes Back, and my favorite theme out of that was always the Imperial March, which I'll play right now. But that to me is the quintessential Star Wars. Besides the theme, to me, this comes in a very close second, and it's just one of the most fantastic pieces of music out there. Let me tell you, that is such an incredible piece. I remember when I first saw it, especially in the theaters, and it just screamed, okay, this is the Empire. Yeah. They are back with a vengeance. This is also supposed to be Darth Vader's theme, which I've always played in my mind, because if this is Darth Vader's theme, why wasn't it in the first Star Wars? And I've always played it in my mind, what if that theme played when he was actually going into the blockade runner?
Oh man,
that would have been such a great, cool, so that was just a fantastic piece. I mean, it's still to this day so recognizable for what it is. I mean, so
I had heard this. I had heard this story. I don't know if it's true or not, but I had heard that Jerry Goldsmith was up for an Oscar in '75, and I think he went with his wife to go see Jaws.
Right.
And when they were sitting in the theater, he heard the opening of Jaws, and he just turned to his wife and he goes, "There goes that Oscar." he knew he lost that. Yeah.
There goes my Oscar.
He goes, "Well, I'm not getting an Oscar this year." Something to that effect.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That is fantastic, man.
Yeah, but both great composers.
Yeah, to recognize the fact that you're like, listen, I'm good, but fuck, I'm not that good.
Well, oddly enough, with Jerry Goldsmith, there is a Jerry Goldsmith award show.
Oh yeah,
what do you mean?
It's an award show for. I looked it up earlier. It's for composition and everything else, and they have it in Jerry Goldsmith's name.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Look at that. That's pretty cool. So another piece that I always loved. So besides Star Wars, there was, of course, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I think Patrick and I always, have always
this is such
about
a haunting piece, man. It's just so creepy.
The actual map room which is such a great piece. But before I get to that, it's interesting how John Williams decided that he was going to retire, right? And then he said, well, I'm going to finish off the third trilogy of the Star Wars films. Even though those Star Wars films, I still think most of it is garbage. But the music is still great.
Mm-hmm.
I think the music is still great. And he decided to do that. He said, well, I'm going to retire. And then they go ahead and do Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes back from retirement to say, okay, I'll finish that up then. Right? Which is interesting because I also found kind of parallels to Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford was so, and we did, of course, a podcast already on that, but Harrison Ford has always been very well known for three of his parts: Han Solo, Indiana Jones, Rick Deckard from Blade Runner.
Mm-hmm.
And when those three movies had basically like when Blade Runner came out, he reprised his role on that. When the sequels came out for Star Wars, he reprised his role as Han Solo. And now he reprises, his last role for Indiana Jones. So he kind of said, what made me famous, let me finish that up. And I think John Williams is, I think, the same, where it's like, you know what, I started this, let me finish it. And I thought that was actually very very cool. So, but yeah, Indiana Jones, I think, like, especially the map room is such a great theme, and I'll put that on right now because if you listen to the track on a CD or something like that, it really starts around 2 minutes. A really cool scene. That's the theme I have when I finish eating a good steak.
What?
No, but one of the things I liked about that piece is the fact that it drives the scene.
Yeah.
You don't see that in movies anymore. And that's sad that you don't see a movie. I really have been sitting down and watching movies to see if there's any movies that really have the soundtrack and the orchestra and the music really drive those scenes where you go, wow, that scene would not be what it is if it wasn't for that piece of music. And this is one of those examples that he did.
That piece says so much about the movie also, because up until this part, you assume the arc was just a folklore, it was just a box or something, and it wasn't until you heard this that you start saying to yourself, there is something to this box that is just not normal. Because you have this, you have this chorus playing in the background. It just sounds otherworldly, man. Like, do not mess with this thing,
Oh, absolutely.
That's the first clue you have in this movie, that there's something else to this box that should not be meddled with,
Yeah. And I love the look on Harrison Ford's face when, like, as the sunlight was moving across the map, his eyes were getting wider. Like, you could see that anticipation. And I think there was that part of him is like, if I find this, I'll be the most famous fucking person in the world.
Yeah.
If I find this is fame and glory. This is, hey, the what is it? The museum gets their hands on the actual Ark of the Covenant. Like, there was so much to the look of his face.
Yeah.
And then the music also made it that way too. I thought that was great. Fortune and glory. The next one is a piece that makes me cry like a little girl. So we were talking about E.T. And how E.T., man, what a great film that was. When it first came out, nobody knew what it was. They just knew that it was an alien. And just like any other, I think, alien movie out there, you would think that it's about, spaceships and lasers and all kinds of stuff. And last thing you expected was the fact that this alien befriends a little boy who really needs a friend because his family, of course, going through divorce. And he's just a kid that just, doesn't know what to do. I mean, he's kind of in a position where the family's broken. And so this kid really, shows him what love is, and he shows this kid what love is, because that's what he needs. They both need each other. And the music for E.T. is probably one of the best compositions I have ever heard from anybody out there. And the ending is what really gets to me, is when they're saying goodbye to each other. That moment, dude, my eyes will well up all the time. And I'm like, it's a fucking puppet, man. But I mean, it's the way they did. I mean, it was the way Steven Spielberg filmed it, and it's the way John Williams actually, composed. So I'll put this one on. I mean, this is one of my favorite compositions from John Williams. Every time I will go to Universal and I hear this, I will go, yep, I'm in Universal Studios in Florida.
They still have it there. Yeah.
They still have it there. And it just seems like it's the theme for that park. And you just become this happy-go-lucky kid that you're like, yeah, I'm going to go on all the rides.
Yeah. And you know how they have the different parking garages, right? So if you park in ET, you'll be hearing this music. If you park in Jaws, you'll be hearing the Jaws theme, or Out to Sea, which is the other part of the Jaws.
I can't even imagine the people that work there.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm so fucking tired of this. So, man, that's just such a great piece of music. And like I said, there's another part to this. I'm not going to play it now, but there's another part to this where it's the goodbye scene from E.T. and how that music, I mean, it really makes that scene. And I swear to God, you will see the most grown-up people in the theaters just bawling their eyes out.
Oh, that's when E.T.'s hugging the kid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is just fantastic, man. That theme is just, I don't know. It just gets me all the time. And I'll play also I'll play the Jaws theme. I mean, this is probably one of his most famous ones, and this is honestly what got Steven Spielberg to be Steven Spielberg from that point on.
That harp is awesome in there, man.
It is a fantastic piece of music because, of course, the shark wasn't working. Bruce
Right.
Bruce was always breaking down, and John Williams just came up with that idea. Hey, whenever you want to show the shark, and if you can't show the shark, let the theme do its thing. And that's I think if the shark was working, this movie would not have been what it is.
The shark not working is probably what made it what it is. You know,
exactly.
No, because this music lets you know that some shit is about to go down.
Well, the music is this theme is the substitute for the shark.
Yeah, whenever the shark wasn't on the screen, this was the shark. This was it. Yeah,
it was meant for suspense and to
you know
build up that anticipation of what's gonna happen or might not happen too.
Right. And there were millions of people who, after they saw this movie, they went to the beach, and when they got in the water, guess what they heard in their head?
They heard
that. That's what they heard in their head.
Exactly true. As a matter of fact, one of the things I always I used to tell the story to people, because one of the things, like when I was working in Best Buy in the audio and video section, and we did our demos, our music demos, I was one of the only few people that I would do film scores, or possibly the only one, at least in my store. There was probably an exception with Zach, who has been on this podcast before, but the one thing I would tell people all the time is like, listen, I'm about to play you something that is, what is it now, 40 years old?
75? Yeah, more.
More?
Yeah.
So it's an old piece of music. I used to know it's an old piece of music from a movie, because honestly, nowadays, I think with the affordability of flat panel TVs, which are now, you could get an 85-inch TV for like $2,500. People nowadays don't associate the fact that, hey, with the screen, you need good sound. It's just not about the screen itself, right? So what I would do is I say, I'm going to play you a piece of music that's old, and you will recognize it right away. And this piece of music honestly saved this movie. And I would play this, and as soon as I started playing it, everybody would recognize and go, oh, that's the Jaws theme. And I was like, it's incredible how old this movie is, but people till this day know what that theme is. Kids know the theme, and they probably haven't even seen the damn movie.
They saw Shark Tales,
which is crazy. So it's very interesting how this music has really become part of the culture. And stuff like that for us, which I think is pretty cool. What was your take on Jurassic Park?
The music, you mean?
Well, the movie itself.
The movie itself also was groundbreaking. I mean, it was the first time that CG had been used in that way to actually represent living creatures. And of course, John Williams came through with one of the greatest scores of all time also.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that it's like you were saying, it was the first time we ever had CG dinosaurs, or CG creatures.
Well, living creatures that were portrayed through CGI.
Like exactly.
That was a first.
That was the first.
Yeah.
So I always felt that the theme for Jurassic Park was not only, I mean, that theme kicks in when Dr. Alan Grant for the first time sees a dinosaur, right? And it's so majestic. And it is just like this thing that everybody's like, holy shit, this is great. But I think it's also a theme for the people in the audience who were seeing something for the first time that was very special.
Yeah.
And it's an unfortunate thing that no new generation will ever experience that.
Correct.
The way we did in the movie theaters, when for the first time we said, I cannot believe that they can make dinosaurs look so real.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're lucky. We are so lucky, man, that we were in the 70s, we were there in the 80s, we were there when Jurassic Park came out.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Gen Xers got it lucky.
Yeah, no, yeah. I think people nowadays take it for granted.
There's nothing left to impress.
That
really.
Yeah, there's really nothing. Like, even I'll be very honest with you. I mean, well, as impressive as Avatar: The Way of Water was, it did not leave me leaving the theater going, "Oh my God, what did I just see?"
Yeah.
I just experienced something that has never been done before. No, all I said was, "That was good."
Pretty.
Yep.
Pretty good.
You never come out of the theater like you did back in the day.
Back in
Yeah,
those
no.
days, right? Where you're like,
Yeah.
holy crap! I mean, what did we just see?
That's like the Matrix.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
If you think
Yeah,
about
it's
it.
another one.
Yeah,
That was another
yeah.
movie like we'd never seen anything like that before.
Never seen anything like that. So, but yeah, Jurassic Park was freaking fun. I'll play some Jurassic Park because it is just still a great. And again, this also reminds me of Universal Studios. That to me has always been one of those incredible pieces of music out there, especially for a movie.
Oh yeah.
And again, you know, that signifies to me, I think, the awe and wonder that we shared with the characters in the film too.
John Williams just I mean, he came up with some great intros to songs too. Just like
he
the
had great
introduction
themes,
and you know.
Yeah.
And one of the ones that are one of the ones that's my favorite that always stands out with me is before the main theme kicks in to Superman, he's got this little like intro that shows, I don't know if you remember the film. It starts out black and white and it's a stage and the curtains open up and it shows footage of a little kid reading a DC comic.
Yes.
And during the background there for about a minute and a half, he plays this little intro that it's just so awesome, and then it just gets quiet, and then it's slow, and then it goes right into the Superman.
Then it builds up into the
and it builds up,
Superman
and it's
theme.
just I just love that intro to Superman, man. I mean, one of the greatest themes of all time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just fantastic. I mean, the band's body of work is, I mean, it's just legendary, and there's just no words to, you know, even describe everything that the man has done. Every composer out there regard him as like this, you know, like the top echelon of what a person could actually do. I saw a documentary it's called A Score. If you ever get a chance to see the documentary Score, it's about film music, and they talk to all these great film composers. I mean, fantastic film composers there. But man, when the subject of John Williams comes on, every one of them, it's like, oh no, yeah. I mean, what he has done with music is, it just doesn't compare to anything else. And a lot of these composers have actually said, hey, he's the reason I became a composer myself. You know, so I think that's a fantastic thing. I mean, but one of my favorite also ones is 1941. While the movie did not do very well, because that was Steven Spielberg's attempt at comedy, I love that soundtrack. It is just such a great soundtrack, it's a fun soundtrack. If you ever get a chance.
It's also very reminiscent to Jerry Goldsmith's Patton.
Yes.
You know, the theme from Patton. It's got that very Americana military, you know, Philip Sousa thing, and he knocks it out of the park with it. I mean, it's just
is great. I mean, the man, you know, 1941, Saving Private Ryan, Harry Potter, which that's another theme that everybody knows. Everybody, when you hear it, people just automatically go, boom, Harry Potter. That's what it is. Kids, especially kids, will be like, nope, Harry Potter. Somebody's playing Harry Potter. I got to go see it.
That's also at Universal Studios playing all the time, man.
Yeah, exactly. So you got Schindler's List, which the violin solo on that is probably
Perlman.
It's just one of the most heart gripping solos out there. Like you mentioned, Superman, Empire of the Sun, Home Alone, Hook, JFK, Minority Report, War Horse.
Poseidon Adventure.
Yeah, War of the Worlds, Link. I mean, the man's filmography is an insane filmography. And from what I hear, he's going to, I mean, of course, he's going to retire from Indiana Jones. In other words, if Disney decides to do another Indiana Jones, he's not going to do it. Same thing with Star Wars. But at 91 or whatever he is, I think, or whatever his age is, he said that he will continue to play music. He will continue to conduct probably some concerts and things like that. But for him to compose music, I think for movies, I think that's something. I think Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was his last one.
Well, just be happy we were here for the entire ride, man. So
yeah, we were here for the entire ride, which is actually fantastic. So, guys, thank you so much, man, for being on this podcast. And especially, again, our number one was John Williams. And I'll leave off John Williams with one of my favorite scores too, which I think is such a great movie.
So John Williams got to play a role in the movie.
Yeah,
when you think about it.
This piece, so this is supposed to be the communication between us and the aliens, and which is phenomenal because they made it all about music. And I just think it's great. When you hear that piece, you could hear the tuba player, the taps that he's doing on the
Right.
Yeah, you could actually hear him.
Yeah, you can actually hear it. It's actually a very good recording, but it's so great. And this just, this is another example of just how great John Williams, is when it comes to, I guess, composing for a scene.
Yeah.
That
Spielberg made him a character. I mean, he made him part of the film. He probably directed him during this scene. It's like, okay, it's like just like an actor because he actually played a role in the movie.
So, which is great. So, for everybody out there, we're at a time where movies, the industry itself, is in question. And what I mean by that is there have been some good movies coming out, but nobody goes to the movies to see it. So many times I see people watching movies or shows on an iPhone or an iPad. And you don't realize the amount of work that goes into making these things for people out there. Yeah, from the talent, directors to people on set, but everything from the people behind the scenes, from color artists to musicians, composers, all these people are just doing their absolute best to bring you the best piece of art that they could possibly make. And I think a lot of people out there just don't appreciate it as much as I think we did in the old days. I mean, you got some aficionados out there that are, movie aficionados and things like that, and they appreciate that. But I feel like the younger generation just doesn't do that. The fact that so many of them are like, you know what? That's great that it came out in the movies. It'll come out in a month and a half on streaming, and I'll watch it on streaming on my shitty 42-inch TV. and that I got on Amazon Day for $150, right?
They need to bring back the theaters like the ones they have in New York that play the old movies. You know how they used to have those theaters? I don't know if they still have them in New York or not. Remember the theaters that used to play old movies like from back in the day, and they would actually play them in the theaters, and charge like you
I'm
know,
not
charge a
sure.
few bucks,
I'm not sure if New York City's doing it. I know like there was some places in Florida that used to do it.
Yeah.
I know that what is it? Kevin Smith does it in his theater
Yeah.
in New Jersey, and you know
Tarantino does it in his own theater as
he
well.
does it in his own theater. But what's interesting is something that he said in one of his podcasts was that he got way more tickets to be sold to see Blues Brothers, than to see it. Like he says, Indiana Jones, they're not even playing it anymore on his theater because they sold
making money.
They're
Well,
not
the
making
Flash
money.
was taken out actually.
Oh, it was the Flash. I'm sorry. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It was the Flash was taken out because it just wasn't making money.
Yeah.
And I think Mark Bernard looked at the Chinese theater that's supposed to it actually houses 900 people.
Yeah.
In there, and for one evening, only 38 people bought tickets.
Wow.
And that I understand because Ezra Miller, I think most people don't want to watch that movie because of Ezra Miller, but it's also the indication of what the movie industry is going through. And when I hear these composers do their music, it's not appreciated, though I think the way we do it. There are a lot of fans out there for it, and that's great, but not enough to, I think, make a big difference. And I wish there was, because I think in the old days we used to appreciate it a lot more. And I hope that a lot of people, you know, can support the film industry and go to the movies and things like that. And, you know, I know movies are expensive nowadays. I mean,
yeah. Cost of it for a date for two people could be up to like $150.
$150 with snacks and everything. That's a lot, you know.
Yeah,
but
you imagine a family, man. Mother, father, two or three kids. Holy moly.
A family of 4 that goes probably out to dinner on that night and that goes watches a movie, you're probably going to spend about $250. That's expensive for some families. You know, so part of me understands that. I mean, that's why I buy the movie pass from AMC, because for $25 a month, I get to watch at least 2 movies a week or 3 movies a week. I do my best to try to watch 2 to 3 in a month. I don't care if the movie sucked. So I could actually say, you know what? I got my money's worth.
Yeah, that is true.
But in a way, you're also supporting the film industry. And I would hate to see these big theaters go away and things like that because people are just not appreciating this as we used to. I hope that, you know, people had, you know, some fun listening to this and listening to us reminisce about our old days of watching movies and talk about, you know, and gushing about these conductors, which is not I would say it's probably not as popular as like gushing over, I don't know, some pop star or something like that. But for us, this for us, this is my pop star, you know, so because I can appreciate that music so much. So, but I want to thank everybody for tuning in, listening, and I want to thank Mark, Frank, and Patrick for just sitting here and listening to me talk for over 2 hours and listening to some music here. So, guys, where can they find you?
They can find me at Patrick Reilly Art on Instagram.
Awesome. Mark?
You could easily find me at Panels to Pixels podcast. Yeah. All you have to do is go to our Facebook page and check us out. And, you know, recently put up Secret Invasion. We're definitely getting the Flash up soon and preparing to do Secret Invasion episode 3.
Okay, awesome. And I always ask this. What bridge are you going to be under this thing?
All right, so we're getting taken out of the bridge part. Cops are not loving it. So I'm just basically walking down Las Olas with a sign that says "We'll podcast for clicks."
Money. Oh my god!
You know,
Las
and
Olas.
again, the other side says that's clicks with a CL.
Oh my god! So he used to walk down Hunts Point, New York, but that was a different time.
Oh,
right.
my
That's
God.
different. That's a whole different area.
For people who don't know about Hunts Point, New York, look that up because I'm not going to go over that right now. But especially in the 70s and 80s. Yeah, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and thank you so much. I enjoyed doing this, and hopefully we could do some more of it. So thank you for listening, and hopefully we'll catch you the next time. I've been your host, Robert Mota, and this has been
It's
I just had a brain fart.
How did you forget your own podcast, sir?
I'm usually the one who gets it wrong.
Oh man, it's late at night and I still got to tap.
I thought I lost the signal or something, man. It said
He
this
said
has been,
fantasy-
and then I'm like looking around like
This
what
was
happened?
Fantasy Licks movie edition.
Fantasy Dicks.
This is Fantasy Picks Movie Edition. We'll catch you next time. Oh my god.